Chapter 2048. Clang. Both sides fought fiercely. Both of them had reached the 9th level of the Pawang realm. For such a low-level world, the battle was enough to destroy this place into powder. Thump, thump, thump. The ghostly flaming ape's body shook violently, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were filled with horror. Although he had used a secret technique, it was still shocking enough. Clang, clang, clang. Violent collisions occurred again and again in the void. The battlefield of both sides gradually deviated from this world. How could they not see that Yi Shiwen wanted to lure them out so that they wouldn't destroy the true martial world? And they also had the same idea. After all, they didn't want the true martial world to be destroyed like this before they could force out the greatest value of the true martial world. Therefore, both sides had a tacit understanding to change the battlefield to the depths of the starry sky. Compared to the ghostly flaming ape, Yi Shiwen's situation was more miserable. His skin seemed to have become transparent all of a sudden, as if it was going to explode from the bursting blood in the next second. His entire body also seemed like it was going to explode at any time. Such a violent force was surging in his body. Not only did it bring him great strength, but it also put him on the verge of self-destruction at any time. However, with the power of the true martial stone sword, he could barely suppress it. Clang! Another sword light cleaved through the vast sky. Yi Shiwen's hair was fluttering wildly, and his eyes were abnormally red. He directly used the magical power Law Idol, and his body also became extremely huge. In the void, it was as if two terrifying giants were fighting. Boom! 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 It was as if the entire universe was struck by thunder as a series of terrifying explosions shook the entire world. Yi Shiwen's body was glowing. The sound of flowing water was like a clap of thunder as he moved. He had transformed into a matchless character. He had never experienced such formidable power before. His aura soared into the sky, and his chi rushed into the galaxy. The sound of the blood in his body was like the roar of the sea, crashing against the shore and throwing rocks into the sky. Golden divinity surged from his body. This was the first time he had surged with golden divinity since the start of the battle. It was like a vast ocean, dazzling and dazzling. The ghostly flaming ape became more and more shocked as the battle went on. It was even more unbelievable that Yi Shiwen was becoming stronger and stronger. It seemed like he could not fully exert such power before, but now he was able to fully exert such power. Compared to him, Yi Shiwen seemed to have lost his last hope of survival. Every move he made was a powerful attack. There was no possibility of holding back at all. He did not even care about exchanging his life for another. Even if he wanted to fight for supremacy, he didn't want to perish together with this madman. As long as he waited for his secret technique to end and his strength to fade, then he could kill him. That would be a simple matter. He kept retreating towards the depths of the starry sky. He wanted to wear down Yi Shiwen's spirit. However, Yi Shiwen seemed to know what he was thinking. He chased after him like a shadow. The true martial stone sword in his hand was a powerful artifact that could injure mythical figures and even gods. This was the first time that Yi Shiwen, who had raised his strength to such an extreme, was able to fully unleash the power of the true martial stone sword. Damn it, roar! The serene demon flaming ape roared unceasingly. However, the other two didn't seem to have any intention of helping him. They also wanted the serene demon flaming ape to consume all of his time. Even they had to be wary of Yi Shiwen in this crazy state. After all, they weren't the ones who would die. Apart from these two, it was even more impossible for others to face Yi Shiwen when he was in such a crazy state. They were not on the same level at all. Even though they were all mythical figures, the difference in strength between them was like heaven and earth. None of them were like a piece of iron, and they all belonged to different worlds. Yi Shiwen's strength had already climbed to the extreme. Every move of his was surging with the power of the extreme way. The long sword in his hand suddenly cut into an incredible angle and directly cut into the opponent's body. All the defenses of the ghostly flaming ape collapsed instantly. The armor on its body was also densely covered in cracks. It could not withstand Yi Shiwen's attack at all. Its head was directly hit by Yi Shiwen. Clang! A loud sound similar to the sound of metal colliding could be heard. The most terrifying thing was that the ghostly flaming ape's head seemed to be split open. There was a huge bloody crack on its head, and bone fragments were flying everywhere. It was extremely terrifying. Everyone could not help but gasp. Things had already progressed to this extent. Yi Shiwen was also very clear that he did not have much time left. Therefore, there was no way he would hold back. He was exchanging his life for the ghostly flaming apes. It was really crazy. Everyone was glad that they were not Yi Shiwen's match. Most importantly, there were 3 existences at the 9th level of the Paoang realm today. Otherwise, they would probably all be annihilated. Even Shi Wuming and the old man with the fleshy wings had a somewhat solemn look on their faces. Damn it! The ghostly flaming ape roared loudly. Countless divine chains of the rule flew out from its body. Countless divine chains of the rule flew out, and then locked the approaching Yi Shiwen. The big stick in its hand directly smashed towards Yi Shiwen's body that was as tall as a mountain. Clang! A terrifying power surged in Yi Shiwen's body, directly allowing him to break free from the divine chains of the rule that covered the sky. Suddenly, the void was shattered. His entire body flew out like a cannonball, smashing into countless stars, and blood splattered all at once. Obvious cracks appeared on his flesh. That club head had almost smashed his entire body into pieces. The ghostly flaming ape was still roaring in anger. It was actually injured by an ant that it had never thought highly of. It was simply a great shame and humiliation. Blood splattered 3,000 feet. It was simply a great shame and humiliation. He took a step forward, and his body crossed the endless Milky Way universe. He chased after Yi Shiwen and directly chased after Yi Shiwen. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. At this moment, Yi Shiwen was even more like an injured beast. He did not care about his body that was about to collapse. A wave of qi surged out from his body. In an instant, some of the original injuries were all recovered at an astonishing speed. He actually directly absorbed life force to recover. This made many myth experts secretly speechless. This was not something that an ordinary person could do. How wasteful was this? Yi Shiwen roared and directly started fighting. The true martial stone sword in his hand buzzed, and the burst of light that burst out was earth-shattering. The fight had already reached its most intense moment. Even the slightest mistake was not allowed because it could possibly cost their lives. The terrifying long stick that was like a pillar that supported the heavens directly smashed down, even smashing a huge hole in the sky. A blazing light burst out, as if the mode was about to start. The long sword in Yi Shiwen's hand did not give way at all. However, at that critical moment, Yi Shiwen's sword had only slightly deviated from its original position. Bang! With a loud bang, the long stick directly smashed onto Yi Shiwen's shoulder. It directly became a bloody mess, and even the bones were exposed. The eerie white bones looked exceptionally terrifying. On the other side, the true martial stone sword in Yi Shiwen's hand directly pierced the phantom flaming ape's chest after he dodged the long stick. It was like an antelope's horn hanging on an antelope's horn. At this moment, the demon flaming ape finally realized what Yi Shiwen was going to do. However, it was too late. Before it could react, Yi Shiwen's sword had already pierced into its body. Puchi! The power of the true martial stone sword was extremely terrifying. This time, it was completely unleashed. The sword almost pierced through the demon flaming ape, causing it to instantly suffer heavy injuries. Blood splattered out along with some internal organs. He actually wants to exchange his life for mine, a myth expert could not help but say while trembling. It was not only because the existence of that level was an existence that he could not touch, but more importantly, this madman's fighting style had completely frightened him. The fierce were afraid of the reckless, and the reckless were afraid of the reckless. If one was willing to sacrifice his life, what was there to be afraid of? He's really crazy. I'm afraid that even if he dies today, he will kill the demon flaming ape. If it were them, they would not be able to do anything to such a madman who wanted to exchange his life for another's. If they really exchanged their lives for his, wouldn't that be exactly what he wanted? If they didn't exchange their lives, it was obvious that they would not be able to defeat the demon flaming ape. Poochie! The long sword was directly pulled out from the demon flaming ape's body, bringing with it a lump of blood. His arm was on the verge of shattering. Cracks could be seen on his white bones. He had severely injured the serene demon flaming ape, so how could he not have paid a price for it? His face was already distorted from the pain. That incomparably terrifying pain was constantly surging through his nerves, causing his body to tremble slightly. It was extremely terrifying. However, a strange smile appeared on his face. Especially under the contrast of the intense pain, his face became distorted. He said while panting, "I've said it before. If you want to exchange my life for an ancient god scripture, you'll have to exchange your life for it. Madman, you're really a madman." The demon flaming ape could not help but roar angrily. Even it was frightened by Yi Shiwen's terrifying aura. Chapter 2049. A cornered dog would jump over a wall, and a cornered rabbit would bite, let alone a person who was cornered. Yi Shiwen's biggest disadvantage was that he didn't have enough time. If he ran out of time, that would be the scariest thing. It was worse than exchanging a life for a life. He didn't have much time, and he didn't have any room to waste. It wasn't easy for him to injure the serene demon flaming ape. It was impossible for him to let him go so easily. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen suddenly took a step and instantly disappeared into the void. He had already arrived in front of the spectral devil flaming ape when he reappeared. The terrifying shockwave was boundless and boundless. It seemed as if a huge Milky Way had swept out from his body. Die! The serene demon flaming ape seemed to have gone mad. It was forced into a desperate situation by Yi Shiwen. Then it smashed down with its mace. Bang! An incomparably loud sound was heard. Yi Shiwen's sternum was completely broken, and blood was dripping everywhere. A few of his bones were completely broken. The attack was aimed directly at Yi Shiwen's heart, and it was going to smash him into pieces. Yi Shiwen wasn't to be outdone. He used the true martial stone sword and directly tore a huge wound on the serene demon flaming ape's chest. It looked incomparably ferocious. Yi Shiwen was very strong, but the serene demon flaming ape wasn't weak either. Both of them were just a step away from attaining the Tao. Since ancient times, it was the closest person to the gods. At this moment, it had completely displayed its full strength. Even with Yi Shiwen's strength, he couldn't really shake it. He could only use this method of exchanging a life for a life to injure it. Especially in terms of comprehension of the realm, the gap was huge. Even with such a huge amount of power, it was still too far away from the serene demon flaming ape. This was the disadvantage of forcibly increasing one's strength. It was not perfect, nor was it flawless. It was completely different from the martial arts incarnation that had fused with it. The only thing that Yi Shiwen could be stronger than the serene demon flaming ape was that he wasn't afraid of death. Only by exchanging a life for a life could Yi Shiwen succeed. Whoosh! A dark green radiance emerged from Yi Shiwen's body, and some wood chi began to twirl around it. In an instant, he had almost fully recovered. He didn't have any other misgivings. He slashed out with his sword, and it was like a river of stars pouring down in torrents. At this time, domains, laws, and splendor were all meaningless. The only thing he could do was use the most primitive technique, which was also the most dazzling way to kill. Unsurprisingly, Yi Shiwen directly chopped the body of the phantom devil flaming ape. However, several of his bones were directly broken, and he let out a muffled groan. Just you. The serene demon flame ape was somewhat deranged. Profound death stage ants like you, I have to stomp tens of millions of them to death if I continue to scream. Do you really think you can defy the heavens with such a secret technique? Even if I want to defy the heavens, don't think too highly of yourself. Yi Shiwen smiled mischievously. His smile was somewhat horrifying, and it made people shudder in fear. Boom! His attack continued. He no longer had any other choice. As he waved his sword, heaven and earth were completely shattered. Everything was shattered by his sword radiance, and a river of stars fell from the sky towards the phantom devil flaming ape. You still dare to come? I admit that you do have some skills. However, do you really think you could defy the heavens with just this? Do you think you can contend against me? You're too naive. You're too naive. He continued to roar angrily. I've seen too many geniuses in my life. You are nothing. He had already been forced into a corner. Otherwise, given his personality, he wouldn't have said such words. He wanted to disrupt Yi Shiwen's state of mind. No one else had the qualifications to force him to this extent, let alone force him to use words to shake Yi Shiwen's state of mind. It was impossible for such a person to exist. However, he had still underestimated Yi Shiwen's determination. In order to kill Yi Shiwen, he no longer cared about anything else. Boom! The true martial stone sword erupted, and he slashed out with all his might. Burial of the heavens. Under the guidance of Yi Shiwen's sword technique, the endless sword radiance turned into a river of stars and directly slashed towards the phantom devil flaming ape. The sword radiance had already reached its peak in his hands. Even the phantom devil flaming ape was injured. One could imagine that even though he hadn't truly reached this realm, he was still more terrifying than some people in this realm. The serene devil flaming ape kept on retreating. His hand had already turned into a pile of rotten flesh. Flesh and blood were flying everywhere. He had been forced to this point by Yi Shiwen. He had never thought that things would turn out like this. In terms of comprehension of the realm, Yi Shiwen was not comparable to him at all. Yi Shiwen's various magical techniques were also far inferior to him. However, Yi Shiwen didn't compete with him in this aspect. Instead, he wanted to exchange a life for a life. All the advantages that the phantom devil flaming ape had turned into nothingness, and he was actually at a disadvantage. Yi Shiwen's blood was like a surging sea, and it could break free from the shackles of his body at any time. Now, under Yi Shiwen's control, it was burning like a raging flame. His sword radiance continued to slash, and it seemed like it was about to explode. This kind of terrifying power made everyone horrified. The phantom devil flaming ape's face was as calm as still water. He waved the big stick in his hand and rushed forward. He had no other choice. He had been forced to this point by Yi Shiwen. Was there even a choice left for him? Moreover, his physical body was also his strong point. After cultivating for so long, he had already reached the invincible Vajra realm. He was incomparably tyrannical. Die! Hammer of 1,000 kilograms. He let out an incomparably loud roar. The iron rod in his hand seemed to be smashing the world into smithereens. He wanted to seize the advantage. He absolutely couldn't let Yi Shiwen continue to have the upper hand. Even if he really forced Yi Shiwen to his death, it wouldn't be a good thing if the news spread. He was a dignified phantom devil flaming ape, and he was even a step away from proving his Tao. Yet, he was actually forced to this point by a puny human. The boundless stick shadows were imbued with countless laws of 1,000 kilograms. They smashed the void of the universe and tore a huge crack, smashing towards Yi Shiwen. At this moment, Yi Shiwen did something shocking again. He didn't choose to use the true martial stone sword to block it. Instead, he used his arm to grab the stick shadows that filled the sky. Clang! An incomparably loud roar was heard. The stick shadows that filled the sky disappeared, and everyone saw that the heavy stick fell directly into Yi Shiwen's hand. Immediately after, everyone saw that Yi Shiwen's left arm couldn't withstand the force of gravity, and the muscles instantly exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, as if his entire body was about to explode. Roar! Yi Shiwen roared like a beast and took on the terrifying force of 1,000 kilograms. The space under his feet directly collapsed, and the power that poured out caused the stars in the distance to shatter. Go to hell! After letting out a roar, he seemed to have exhausted all of his strength and fiercely flung out a terrifying sword ray. It pierced through all the stars and instantly blasted into the demon flaming ape's chest. Boom! The phantom devil flaming ape's body suddenly exploded as if it had encountered some terrifying force. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. How could this be? I can't accept this. The phantom devil flaming ape roared continuously. He used all the strength in his body in an attempt to reform his flesh and blood. Even so, he was still severely injured. However, his gaze towards Yi Shiwen was even more crazed and bloodthirsty. He swore that he would definitely tear Yi Shiwen into pieces. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to live up to what he had suffered today. Yi Shiwen was in a worse state than him. He directly knelt in the void. The muscles on his arm that had ruptured began to recover. However, his aura was already in a mess. Obviously, he couldn't compete with the phantom devil flaming ape in terms of speed. His body was constantly flickering with green light. It was a vigorous vitality that was injected into his body. He began to recover slowly. "Brat, just you wait. I will tear you into 1,000 pieces. I will also crush this true martial world into pieces. Don't even think about running away. They will become my food to replenish my energy. No, I want all the humans in this universe to die." The serene demon flaming ape roared as if it had gone mad. "Unfortunately, you won't have this chance," Yi Shiwen shouted. "Senior, do it." The serene demon flaming ape immediately became vigilant after hearing Yi Shiwen's words. However, before it could react, the true martial stone sword that had already flown out suddenly burst out with an unprecedented radiance. A majestic and boundless coercion surged out, and a figure faintly appeared from within it. Then, an earth-shattering sword light suddenly shot out from the tip of the true martial stone sword. It swept out instantly. The sword light directly swept across the phantom devil flaming ape's head. His head was immediately blasted into powder, and his spirit was completely torn into pieces. Silence. The entire universe was unprecedentedly silent. No one expected Yi Shiwen to be able to turn the situation around in the end. Moreover, it was such a dramatic turn of events. Under such circumstances, everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was definitely dead and couldn't possibly survive. Who would have thought that he still had such a trump card hidden in the end? This. Everyone opened their mouths but couldn't say anything. Compared to the people from the true martial school, everyone knew how powerful the phantom devil flaming ape was. However, it died in Yi Shiwen's hands in the end. Whoosh! The true martial stone sword turned into a ray of sword light and flew to Yi Shiwen's side. It revolved around him continuously as if it was protecting him. Huff, huff, huff. In the universe, only Yi Shiwen's heavy breathing could be heard. Chapter 2050. Everyone was stunned as if they were scared out of their wits. There was no other sound in the void of the universe. Everyone stared blankly at this scene as if they had seen a ghost. Before this, even the craziest and boldest person would not have thought that the final battle would turn out like this. The one who died was not Yi Shiwen, but the demonic flaming ape at the 9th heaven of Paong. "You actually got away with it?" Shi Wuming looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. His expression was a bit cold, but also a bit horrified. Yi Shiwen had done something that even he had never thought of. It was already embarrassing enough for them to be suppressed by Yi Shiwen, let alone being killed. That was unforgivable. You're just an ant. Just because you have some secret techniques, you actually want to be on equal footing with us. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even though Yi Shiwen had killed the demonic flaming ape, Shi Wuming didn't care because it was just a coincidence. He sneered coldly and blasted a punch towards Yi Shiwen's already severely injured body in an instant. Boom! At this moment, the power of the 5 elements began to condense in Yi Shiwen's body. A picture scroll emitted an astonishing light on his body. It was the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram, which directly protected Yi Shiwen and blocked this wave of attack. "You're a little interesting, ant. You're obviously just an ant, but you actually have a lot of powerful instruments." Shi Wuming looked at Yi Shiwen with a cold gaze. At the same time, there was a bit of passion in his eyes. No one wanted to give up on such an instrument. Anyone who wanted to prove their Tao could see that the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram was extraordinary. Although Yi Shiwen hadn't displayed his peak, it was enough for them to see its value. Boom! Shi Wuming attacked again. His figure was like a ghost as he pierced through the universe and arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. The chains on his body began to flutter. In the past, this was a method to trap him. Now he had refined it and turned it into his most powerful weapon. Crash! The chains engraved with countless powerful incantations directly tore through the space and directly slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Clang! Yi Shiwen fiercely grabbed this chain. The muscles of his left hand directly burst open, and his entire arm broke into pieces, but he firmly grasped this chain. Whoosh! The true martial stone sword in Yi Shiwen's hand flew out, forming a sword river that slashed toward Shi Wuming. His eyes were incomparably cold, and he didn't care that his body was about to explode. Qi was constantly being emitted from his body, and an endless stream of life essence was constantly being integrated into his body, forcibly maintaining his physical body. Otherwise, he would have exploded on his own without even fighting. Do you think the same trick will work on me? Shi Wuming chuckled, but he was incomparably indifferent. His expression was ice cold. His big hand suddenly grabbed out, and the void was shattered. Corpse poison surged out, poisoning everything. It followed the space and directly pounced towards Yi Shiwen. Boom! The sword light collided with the corpse poison. The sword light was incomparably sharp, and it directly shattered everything. However, it was ultimately stopped by the corpse poison for a moment. When it rushed out of the encirclement, it directly pounced on empty air. At this moment, Shi Wuming had directly arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. He took mysterious steps, and no one knew what kind of body technique it was. It was extremely fast. Yi Shiwen only felt that his vision was blurred, and he didn't know when Shi Wuming had already arrived in front of him. Puff! An incomparably loud roar resounded, and Yi Shiwen was directly punched out. His figure didn't know how many stars were broken, and his physical body, which was already severely injured, seemed even more fragmented now. Huff, huff, huff! Yi Shiwen's heavy breathing spread throughout the universe, and it became more and more rapid. His vision also gradually began to blur. He knew that his forceful action of burning his life force had already caused great side effects to his body. Moreover, this body of his was also not compatible with him. However, there was no way out now. At this point, it was only possible to fight to the death. Whoosh! Shi Wuming had already rushed up, accompanied by the descent of a huge corpse kingdom. Countless laws danced in the air and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. You? If this is all you've got, then go to hell. Shi Wuming laughed strangely and finally released. The tyranny that had accumulated in his heart for countless years seemed to be completely released on Yi Shiwen. When this trouble was resolved, all the problems would be over, and he would be free at that time. Bang! Shi Wuming grabbed another piece of flesh from Yi Shiwen's body and swallowed it. He instinctively felt that there seemed to be something wrong, but at this time, he couldn't care so much. He also knew that Yi Shiwen was very dangerous. Being able to slaughter the ghostly flaming ape was an extremely shocking thing in itself. If Yi Shiwen succeeded, wouldn't his lifetime reputation be ruined? From the looks of it, Yi Shiwen had completely fallen into a disadvantageous position. He only had the strength to resist. Under Shi Wuming's attacks, he was repeatedly injured, almost like a candle in the wind. Some people in the true martial school were already crying. Many people couldn't bear to see Yi Shiwen die under Shi Wuming's attacks. Even the true martial stone sword wouldn't be able to protect Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was good at offense, not defense. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen was constantly blasted away, but every time, he stood up like a tenacious cockroach. Still not dead, still not dead, still not dead. Shi Wuming continued to roar. Even he was a little impatient. This kid is really tenacious. What's that? The heart of the tree ancestor? It's actually supporting you in your body. Then, I'll dig it out and see how much strength you have left. Shi Wuming roared tyrannically. His eyes were so sharp that he could see the ancestor tree's heart inside Yi Shiwen's body at a glance. He wanted to strangle Yi Shiwen to death at once. He absolutely wouldn't give him any chance to turn things around. Die! He roared and laughed. He forcefully received the sword of the true martial stone sword, and a huge wound was slashed on his body. Endless blood splattered on the spot. Then, he clawed at Yi Shiwen's chest fiercely. Poochie! A big hole was clawed on Yi Shiwen's body, and a green heart was pulled out. Ha! It's the heart of the tree ancestor. I couldn't do anything to that old guy tens of thousands of years ago. Now that he's dead, it just so happens that the heart of the tree ancestor has fallen into my hands. It can help my cultivation to improve further." Sure Wuming laughed and said he had fought with the tree ancestor tens of thousands of years ago. He once led his corpse army to attack the ancestor world, but was stopped by the tree ancestor. Therefore, he knew how powerful the heart of the tree ancestor was. Although the tree ancestor was already old at that time, he was still terrifyingly powerful. Sure Wuming didn't have the chance to succeed. Unexpectedly, he succeeded after tens of thousands of years. Don't be happy too early." Yi Xuan chuckled. Then, he forcefully formed a seal, and a majestic force swept wildly in the heart of the tree ancestor. Not good. Sure Wuming immediately realized something. This might be a trap, a huge trap. He hurriedly wanted to throw away the heart of the tree ancestor, but it was too late. A destructive force suddenly exploded in the heart of the tree ancestor. Boom! A terrifying force surged out and directly swept in all directions. The heart of the tree ancestor exploded on the spot. That terrifying shockwave even sent some of the experts of the legend realm flying. Everyone looked at this scene with an ugly expression on their faces. They didn't expect that Yi Xuan was not only cruel and merciless, he was also cruel to himself. The heart of the tree ancestor was his only hope, and now he actually dared to directly explode it. They hadn't seen such ruthlessness in a long time. Ever since they entered the mythical realm, they had become more and more cherished their lives. Naturally, they wouldn't be as desperate as before. This was something that couldn't be helped. Now, Yi Xuan's ruthlessness made them feel as if a lifetime had passed. Yi Xuan was the first to fly out. His entire body was unrecognizable, and his whole body was constantly exploding. Without the support of the heart of the tree ancestor, how could he still maintain such a tyrannical body? Damn it, how dare you injure me? An even more tyrannical voice came from the center of the explosion. Sure Wuming directly took a step out. Half of his body had been blown up, revealing his ghastly white bones. He looked even more sinister and terrifying. He didn't expect that he would actually be tricked by Yi Xuan. He, who had been suppressing Yi Xuan from beginning to end, actually suffered such a big loss in Yi Xuan's hands. "I'm going to swallow you alive." Sure Wuming, who only had half of his face left, became even more tyrannical, like an enraged lion. "I'm afraid you won't have a chance. Go to hell with me." Yi Xuan chuckled and suddenly waved his hand. A sword light descended from the sky and fiercely slammed down, directly blasting Sure Wuming, who only had half of his body left. Bang! Sure Wuming exploded on the spot. How could this be? I can't accept this. Sure Wuming's tyrannical voice was still reverberating in the universe, shocking everyone. Huff huff! Yi Xuan's breathing became more and more intense, and it became shorter. Gradually, he was already breathing more than he was breathing. After killing 2 mythical peak existences in a row, he had also reached his limit. He really didn't have the strength to continue. Sorry, I've tried my best. Hey, Yi Xuan, a young man like you doesn't even care about your life. Why would I care about my rotten life? Let me help you one last time. Chapter 2051. Everyone was a little numb. If they were surprised at first, then they could only say that they were a little numb now. Yes, at this time, they could only say that they were numb. 1 was at the peak of the mythical realm. 2 were at the peak of the mythical realm. Even in the mythical realm, these 2 were extremely strong. No one thought that the 2 of them would die, especially at the hands of Yi Xuan. This was an absolutely unbelievable fact. However, these 2 pieces of news came one after another, and it came so quickly that they were somewhat unable to accept it. But there was no other way. Whether they accepted it or not, it had already happened. Many people were extremely glad. Fortunately, they did not interfere easily. Otherwise, they would have been among the people who died. Even 2 at the peak of the mythical realm had died at Yi Xuan's hands. They did not think that they could survive. This was simply impossible. They did not believe that Yi Xuan, who had killed even at the peak of the mythical realm, would be so kind as to let them go. Fortunately, This malefic star was finally going to die. This guy was finally going to die. Without the ancestor tree's heart to maintain the injuries on his body, he would collapse on his own without anyone hitting him. Thinking of this, everyone was incomparably happy. Hey, Yi Shiwen, a young man like you does not care about your life. Why would I care about my rotten life? Let me give you one last helping hand. Suddenly, just when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was going to collapse on the spot, a vigorous force from the universe crossed the vast sky and directly smashed onto Yi Shiwen's body. And Yi Shiwen's body, which was gradually beginning to collapse, had miraculously recovered. Little by little, he recovered to his peak, and his strength was also majestic to the extreme. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes. His eyes were also filled with a look of disbelief. He did not expect that someone would help him at such a critical moment. Originally, he had already lost all hope. 3 top-notch experts had come, and this had already far exceeded his previous expectations. The backup plan he had prepared was useless, and he had only managed to kill 2 powerful enemies. This was his biggest regret. Unexpectedly, at this critical moment, another strand of life force actually fell on his body. It was simply incredible. His injuries had actually begun to recover. This elemental energy is... Yi Shiwen was extremely surprised. Yi Shiwen, I have completed my last mission since I survived until now. I was indebted to the Qin Emperor and promised him to take care of the humans in this area. So, I have been using a secret method to survive until now. Unfortunately, I have reached my limit now. I can no longer protect the humans in this area. In the future, I will hand over this place to you. I believe that you can do it. Yi Shiwen was extremely astonished when he heard this voice. That was because he had heard this voice before. He had personally been summoned by the old Union Master when he had joined the Northern Dipper Alliance. And this voice belonged to the founder of the Northern Dipper Alliance. Several hundred years had passed, and he had thought that his cultivation had already far surpassed the old Alliance Masters. He had never expected that at the most crucial moment, the old Alliance Master would actually save him, transferring the last of his life force to him through the void. How many secrets were hidden in the Northern Dipper Alliance? Yi Shiwen was extremely astonished. It was probably much deeper than he had imagined. It was related to the legendary Qin Emperor who had shaken the heavens and realms. The prestige of the Qin Emperor had been praised in the heavens and realms. In modern times, he was the only one who had achieved the Great Way and become an emperor. He could be called the first peerless genius of the human race since ancient times. No one could compare with him. Otherwise, he would not have been able to kill his way out of the heavy enemies and become a supreme emperor. For Yi Shiwen, even achieving the Great Way and becoming a deity was an unattainable goal at present. Achieving the Great Way and becoming an emperor was even more out of reach. However, these were not the key points. He could feel that this life force was constantly churning in his body, healing his injuries little by little. He was about to recover to his peak. Yi Shiwen, this life force was left behind by the Qin Emperor. I have relied on this life force to survive from that war until now. I am indebted to the Qin Emperor for thinking highly of me, so I reluctantly took on the responsibility of the guardian of the humans in this area. Later, I established the Northern Dipper Alliance, and I have been holding on until now. Now, I have completely passed this power to you. From now on, the old Alliance Master's voice began to be intermittent and finally disappeared completely. Boom! The flesh-winged old man finally made his move. His face was also incomparably dignified. He thought that there was nothing left for him today. He only needed to watch Yi Shiwen's head being chopped off. Who would have thought that things would continue to exceed his imagination? Not only did Yi Shiwen not die, but on the contrary, it seemed that he had obtained great benefits. He absolutely could not allow such a situation to happen. He had to eliminate Yi Shiwen before he could change so much that even he couldn't deal with him. With a roar in the void, incomparably dazzling Dao runes began to churn crazily, wanting to crush Yi Shiwen's figure in the void. Boom! This wave of power directly bounced back. It actually bounced back this terrifying power. Yi Shiwen seemed to be in a cocoon of light, and there was no movement at all. The flesh-winged old man's face was even colder. His full-force attack was actually completely rebounded. What kind of force was this? How could it be so powerful? Damn it, you're a troublemaker. You're a bit strange, but don't even think about surviving. The flesh-winged old man took a step forward and stomped down with one foot, intending to trample Yi Shiwen into two halves. Whoosh! A sword light slashed out. The true martial stone sword directly flipped out in the void and directly smashed the flesh-winged old man's big foot into powder on the spot. In the universe, Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes. That extremely powerful force was all churning in his body, and the blood in his body was surging like a tsunami. Die! He only uttered a word, and that terrifying force instantly surged out and directly blasted towards the flesh-winged old man. The flesh-winged old man's face suddenly changed, and he frantically retreated. This force contained a power that even he was afraid of. It was a power that far exceeded his level of understanding. It was like the power of the legendary gods, but how could this person possess such power? This was impossible. Boom! This force still blasted the flesh-winged old man's body violently, and it directly sent the flesh-winged old man flying. The flesh-winged old man that was protecting his body was blown into pieces on the spot. It couldn't withstand the erosion of this force at all. That was a power that far exceeded his level of understanding. It was the true majestic divine power. And before he could react, Yi Shiwen had already taken a step forward and chased after him. He suddenly blasted a fist down with a loud bang. A large hole was blasted through the flesh-winged old man's chest. It was a bloody mess, and blood splattered everywhere. His chest was like a piece of paper. At this moment, Yi Shiwen's aura was like a mountain. He was like a real god, and frantically swept out. Yi Shiwen's eyes were clear. His spirit, which had originally been heavily injured, had actually recovered under the nourishment of this Yuan power. This made him extremely happy. This was because this was not his physical body at all. This was the physical body of the ancient ancestor religion leader. With his physical body, even if he used a secret technique to the extreme, it was still impossible for him to truly contend against such a peak existence of the mythical level. With no other choice, he could only use the physical body of the ancient ancestor religion leader. After using a secret technique to the extreme, he forcefully used the ancestral tree's heart to maintain such powerful combat power. Killing the ghostly demon Flaming Ape had already used up all his strength. As for killing Shi Wuming, he was more or less lucky. Although he had tricked Shi Wuming, if Shi Wuming didn't fall for it, there was nothing he could do. He had already used up all his strength. He had used a peak profound death realm Yuan spirit to take control of such a physical body. In addition, he had used a powerful secret technique to push it to the extreme. The damage to his Yuan spirit was imaginable. His Yuan spirit was being consumed at an alarming rate. After this battle, even if his physical body was unharmed, his Yuan spirit would be completely destroyed. It was equivalent to dying. He had come to this battle with the determination to die. There were things a man should and shouldn't do. He could be ruthless, but there were some responsibilities that he couldn't let go of. There were billions of lives in the true martial domain, and he might be their last hope. Originally, he thought that he was doomed. Who would have thought that he would actually be saved by the old Alliance Master? This Yuan spirit that came from the legendary Emperor Qin surged in his body, stopping the collapse of the ancient ancestor religion leader's physical body. Although it couldn't be maintained forever, the ancient ancestor religion leader's physical body had already been pushed to the extreme. As long as this Yuan spirit was exhausted, it would automatically collapse. However, this amount of time was enough for him. What really surprised him was that his Yuan spirit had actually been nourished by the Yuan Qi of life. Not only did it recover to its original state, it had also advanced a step further, allowing his Yuan spirit to fuse with the divinity, allowing his Yuan spirit to undergo an astonishing transformation. In a single breath, he had stepped into the Paoang realm from the peak of the profound death realm. Although it was only a transformation of the Yuan spirit was far more difficult than the physical body when it came to the transformation of the physical body and Yuan spirit. Now that he had crossed this most difficult step, It was only a matter of time before he stepped into the Pawang realm. Not only did he not need to die, but his cultivation had also improved. He only felt that his mind was clear. The heavens were still looking after him and had not given up on him. Die! He let out a loud roar. He held the true martial stone sword in his hand and sliced the old man with the fleshy wings into two. His expression was calm. Although there were still many legendary experts, he knew that the battle between demigods had ended. Chapter 2052. Legend realm experts were, without exception, demigod realm experts. To them, they were only half a step away from stepping into the realm of the legendary gods. In the profound world, without exception, they were all existences that stood at the pinnacle. With a wave of their hand, they could turn the profound world upside down. However, there were different levels among them. Without a doubt, the three experts that Yi Shiwen had killed were the top existences. They were the strongest. They were only a little bit away from entering the legendary realm of Dao confirming. They were invincible figures. Yi Shiwen's gaze was extremely cold as he looked at the legend experts hiding in the darkness. Yi Shiwen's ice-cold glare made the experts of the legend shudder in fear. Boom! An incomparably cold roar came out. Then, in the void of the universe, countless ghost heart fire began to appear in the void. At this time, everyone realized that the ghost heartfire array had been set up in the middle of them. No, it should be said that he had already set it up before. He just hadn't activated it. The entire array exuded a terrifying feeling that made them tremble in fear. Boundless coercion crushed over. What kind of array is this? I'm a legend expert. How can this array produce coercion on me? Impossible. I don't believe it. I absolutely don't believe it. What a ruthless scheme. Even at the most dangerous time, Yi Shiwen didn't intend to activate the entire array. He wants to catch all of us in one fell swoop. What a vicious scheme. Yi Shiwen looked at everyone coldly. His gaze was cold and emotionless. He took a deep breath. He didn't expect that he would still be alive to activate this array. Indeed, this Ghost Heartfire array was his trump card. In case he was defeated, this array would be the true Martial University's last resort. Every one of these legendary experts was extremely tyrannical. Even the weakest one among them had enough power to destroy the entire true martial world. Even the six-legged spider monster had no way to stop these terrifying experts who were crazily charging at them. Therefore, if they didn't want to leave behind any future troubles, they couldn't let a single one of them go. Otherwise, it would be a complete disaster. That was why he had lured them here and placed the spirit formation here. The only thing he hadn't expected was that he would be able to activate the spirit formation while he was still alive. Ever since he saw the nether devil flaming ape, Sure Wooming, and the old man with the fleshy wings, he had lost all hope. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to activate the spirit formation while he was still alive. The world was truly unpredictable. Who would have thought that he would be the one to emerge victorious in the end? It completely changed the structure of the entire world. Yi Shiwen, what are you trying to do? Don't tell me that you want to kill all of us? A legendary expert was startled and angry at the same time. Don't you know which forces are standing behind us? If you dare to touch us, you won't have a good life. That's right. Don't think that you can maintain this kind of combat power forever. You will decline sooner or later. When that time comes, it will be your death. Many Myth Realm experts chimed in. A disdainful smile appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. These lofty Myth Realm experts were incomparably arrogant and didn't put him in their eyes at all. But now they had also fallen into such a state. It was really ridiculous. So, what if these people were Myth Realm experts? They were still afraid of death. You won't be able to wait until that time comes. Yi Shiwen's expression was ice cold. He pinched a seal, and the entire Ghost Heartfire formation began to rotate. A monstrous power was constantly surging inside it. Boom! 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 Extremely loud booming sounds rang out, and many of the Myth Realm experts could clearly sense a monstrous power crushing down on their bodies. It forced its way into their souls, wanting to cause their souls to explode in the air. Yi Shiwen, you will die a horrible death. Yi Shiwen, we won't let you off even if we become ghosts. These myth realm experts felt fear. They no longer dared to think that Yi Shiwen was just trying to scare them. What a joke! He could even slaughter a terrifying existence at the peak of myth realm. How could such a person be soft-hearted? I'm not afraid of living people, let alone ghosts. Yi Shiwen sneered. He didn't care about the threat of these people at all. Boom! The first myth realm expert couldn't withstand such pressure and exploded with a loud bang. His flesh and blood began to burst out in all directions. A part of it rushed into the Ghost Heart Fire Array and turned into nourishment for the operation of the Ghost Heart Fire Array. Another part fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. As the blood essence of this myth realm expert integrated into the Ghost Heart Fire formation, the formation's power suddenly increased under Yi Shiwen's control. Boom! 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 A huge explosion sounded, and the sky was filled with the blood essence. A part of it turned into a torrent and flowed into the Ghost Heartfire formation, while another part flowed into Yi Shiwen's hands. In the blink of an eye, more than 30 godmyth experts exploded into blood essence, and the monstrous formation also disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a somewhat relaxed expression. Although he didn't know if there would be a follow-up, at least the current problem was solved. Crack, crack. Cracks began to appear on Yi Shiwen's body that was still intact. It shattered inch by inch, but there was a smile on his face. Then, he directly stretched out his hand and poured the condensed noble blood essence river in a true martial school. Boom! Among the more than 30 myth realm experts, Yi Shiwen's body also exploded in an instant. Somewhere in true martial school, Yi Shiwen sat cross-legged in the secret territory and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face showed a bit of helplessness. The ancient ancestor religious leader used his body to protect himself, but it still hurt his body. He already felt that it was God's blessing to be able to deal with so many strong enemies this time. It was really hard to imagine what would happen if he failed. It was simply a huge disaster. Boom! Without waiting for him to think more, in the void, a huge roar came over. The void was torn open and a huge crack appeared. Then, a mighty blood energy fell directly into his body. This was the most essential blood essence of the more than 30 myth realm experts, and it was the blood essence of the blood essence. The blood energy brought with it a torrent of energy, and all of it fell on Yi Shiwen's body. It was as if it came from the 9 heavens. Each drop of this blood essence was as heavy as Mount Tai, and it fell directly into his body. One could imagine what kind of terrifying power Yi Shiwen was enduring. Boom! The blood essence collided with his body, and a loud sound of metal colliding was heard. He gritted his teeth, opened his eyes, and operated observing person scripture, forcibly integrating this energy into his body. He operated this powerful force. He wanted to use this powerful blood essence to directly break into a higher realm. He had prepared for this breakthrough for hundreds of years. However, this condition was better than the best he had imagined before. Not only did his soul complete the transformation first, but it was also nourished by the blood essence of dozens of myth realm experts. He waved his hand, and a hideous phantom appeared in the void. Damned lowly mortal, how dare you capture me? You will pay the price. A wave of divinity swept out in a circle. Damned lowly mortal, how dare you capture me? You will pay the price. A wave of divinity's coercion swept out in circles. He didn't bother to say anything to the abomination, and he directly opened his mouth and swallowed the abomination. He was too lazy to say anything to the abomination, and he directly opened his mouth and swallowed the abomination. How is this possible? You can actually refine it. In Yi Shiwen's body, the abomination said in horror. Gods were eternal existences, and although the abomination was the embodiment of the evil thoughts of the gods, it was also contaminated with this characteristic. It was impossible to refine these abominations with ordinary means, and Yi Zhenmo had to use the real sunglasses to refine this abomination for Yi Kuang. One could imagine how difficult it was to refine this abomination. But now, Yi Shiwen used the blood essence of these myth realm experts to forcibly refine this abomination's power into his body. Boom! The aura on his body began to directly rush into the sky, and as if it was going to completely cut the void, it turned into a shocking sword aura. All of them suddenly burst into the sky. In the sky, a terrifying cloud began to condense. The heaven's retribution had finally come. Yi Shiwen slightly breathed a sigh of relief. This heaven's retribution should have come a long time ago, but now it was finally coming. Thinking of this, his figure flashed, and he was already out of the true martial domain, and he flew into the universe. In the sky, a violent power was brewing. It was the power of the heaven's retribution, and it condensed into a layer of clouds, and the sparks of thunder and lightning flickered in it, and the ions condensed into a terrifying electric man. Yi Shiwen looked up into the void, and it was as if he was looking at a huge heavenly court, and there were countless celestial soldiers and generals above it, and they came down to besiege him. Ordinary people would be scared just by seeing such a scene. Wallalala! With an incomparably loud roar, a huge lightning dragon came crashing down like a mountain. Boom! This electric dragon was directly caught in Yi Shiwen's hand, and then he crushed it. It could not pose any threat to him at all. Wallalala! In just an instant, countless electric dragons fell, and instantly turned his body into a sea of thunder and lightning, directly submerging his whole body, and this was just the beginning. Then, countless lightning heaven's retribution directly fell, and everything in the world was smashed into powder. It was incomparably terrifying. And in this endless lightning heaven's retribution, Yi Shiwen slowly walked in it, his eyes incomparably deep. Chapter 2053. Yi Shiwen didn't care about this dreadful coercion. He raised his hand and cleanly destroyed these lightning bolts. These lightning didn't even pose much of a threat to him. He allowed these lightning bolts to strike his body, but they were drowned by his exuberant chi and blood. His blood was like a raging sea wave, stirring up turbulent waves and drowning everything. The power that belonged to those legendary experts was surging in his body. Not only was he not afraid, but he was also using the power of the heavenly tribulation to refine the blood essence. For him, the blood essence of the legendary experts was clearly beyond his ability. Although he only absorbed a part of the blood essence from each person, it was still a very large number. However, with so many of them added up, it was still a very large number. This made him feel a surge of power surging within it. If it was just a little, he could forcibly refine it. But now that it was so large, even if he suppressed it, he didn't know how long it would take for him to refine it all. What he knew now was that if he couldn't refine all the essence blood in time, then this great nourishment that was hard to find for ordinary people would soon cause his entire body to explode. And with the power of the heavenly tribulation, Yi Shiwen could refine the blood essence in the shortest time possible. Such a powerful sign of tribulation transcendence quickly attracted the attention of countless people, especially in this part of the void. There were too many visitors who did not belong to this place, and now all of them had noticed such signs. This was because the scene of crossing the heavenly tribulation was too big. Although Yi Shiwen had gone as far away as possible from the true martial domain and into the depths of the starry sky to cross the heavenly tribulation, the people in the true martial domain could still feel the terrible power of the heavenly thunder. This was a power that was beyond their imagination. Yi Shiwen's surging energy and blood nearly reached the myth level, which meant that the power of the heavenly tribulation had increased exponentially. His heavenly tribulation was already far stronger than an ordinary person's, and now it was even more powerful. Who is crossing the heavenly tribulation? Is someone proving the Tao? Is it too scary? What a powerful heavenly tribulation. How is this possible? I'm a legendary expert, but under this heavenly tribulation, I feel like I'm trembling. Is someone really proving the Tao? Who is proving the Tao in that world? I want to see. All kinds of experts began to move towards the place where Yi Shiwen was crossing the heavenly tribulation. At this time, the news that Yi Shiwen had killed dozens of legendary experts had not spread, so people began to rush towards this area. Especially those who weren't too far away. Their speed was extremely fast. In just a short moment, they had already arrived at this universe and were completely shocked by the scene in this universe. Everyone was originally attracted by the ridiculously powerful heavenly tribulation, but after arriving here, the first thing they noticed wasn't the ridiculously powerful heavenly tribulation, but the broken laws in the universe. It was like a scene of broken walls and dilapidated walls. An earth-shattering battle had taken place here. In the void, there was still a horrifying aura, and some of the blood essence scattered outside still retained an astonishing amount of energy. And what scared them even more was that the blood essence on the broken walls didn't belong to just one person. Although they were very powerful, and all of them were legendary experts, but none of them were the same. After a rough feeling, they found that there were dozens of experts, and even 3 of the most terrifying experts at the peak of the legendary level had their blood splashed on the spot. Suddenly, a terrifying scene flashed in their minds. These were dozens of legendary experts, and any one of them was an existence that could summon the wind and summon the rain in the mysterious world. Even the existence of the peak of the legendary level was considered as a big shot in the mysterious world, and in this era where the gods didn't appear, such strength was enough to be regarded as unprecedented. And such experts actually died here. It was simply inconceivable. Although it was only a bit of blood splashed on the spot, it didn't prevent these people from thinking about the situation at that time. What kind of tragic battle could actually annihilate dozens of legendary experts on the spot? Could it be that they encountered the legendary gods? This was the only explanation. Only the existence that had become a god could create such an amazing battle record. They were simply in a mess. Once the news of dozens of powerful legendary experts dying here was spread, the entire mysterious world would be in a mess, and everyone would go crazy. The destruction of dozens of powerful legendary experts was enough to destroy a behemoth like the Heaven Wasteland Palace, and it was enough to set off a storm. Crazy? They were really going crazy. After everyone imagined the countless tragic scenes of the battle, they looked at the center of the heavenly tribulation. The existence that was like a god was walking in the heavenly tribulation and was actually unscathed. That terrible heavenly tribulation, just the pressure that it emitted made everyone have an uncontrollable urge to kneel down, especially some of the legendary experts who rushed over. They were simply about to faint. Although they could tell that this was the heavenly tribulation of stepping into the Pawang realm, they didn't dare to make a conclusion. However, what really made them not dare to make a conclusion was that they had never heard of such a terrifying demigod tribulation in the thousands of years that they had lived for tens of thousands of years. The power of earth, fire, water, and wind churning in the thunder calamity could almost tear apart a myth expert who had just entered the Pawang realm on the spot. Not to mention, they even saw that in the thunder calamity, there were countless heavenly soldiers of lightning. These heavenly soldiers roared and rushed towards that person, the sound of thunder shaking heaven and earth. This was a different kind of heavenly tribulation, and it was not the kind that they could usually see. Not to mention seeing such a terrible heavenly tribulation, they had not even heard of it. Especially those legendary experts. They had once passed the heavenly tribulation of stepping into the Pawang realm. That heavenly tribulation was already very powerful, and it could almost be said that it was almost impossible to survive, but compared to this heavenly tribulation, it was nothing. What kind of monster is this? Why is it so terrible? I'm about to faint. I don't even dare to think about this terrible heavenly tribulation. Even if I have now entered the legendary realm, I will still be seriously injured if it hits me. Who the hell is this person? He must be a peerless genius. Otherwise, it is impossible to have such a terrible heavenly tribulation. Next, an even more shocking scene happened. As if the lightning tribulation did not hit him enough, the cyan figure directly rushed into the clouds of tribulation. Their eyes almost popped out, thinking that they had seen wrongly. Someone actually dared to rush into the clouds of tribulation. Ordinary people could not wait to get as far away from the clouds as possible. They had never heard of anyone daring to rush into the clouds. A lunatic, simply a lunatic. In the clouds of tribulation, countless lightning power condensed under the law turned into a lightning palace, appeared in the sky above Yi Shiwen, and then came crashing down. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen's body was bombarded on the spot. What was even more unexpected was that Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid at all. He directly blasted his fist out. His divinity was suffused with a terrifying radiance. He didn't even care about the bombardment of the heavenly palace. He didn't show the slightest sign of weakness. Clang! The entire heavenly palace shook violently, unable to suppress him at all. He kept slaughtering his way in and out of the heavenly lightning soldiers. None of the heavenly lightning soldiers could withstand a single strike from him. At that moment, he didn't even need to rely on his own strength to fight. On the contrary, he was simply borrowing the chi and blood of the myth experts he had killed. Therefore, every time he attacked, a mighty river of chi and blood swept over 3,000 miles. Extremely spectacular. Although these lightning troops were many times more tyrannical compared to Yi Shiwen, it was still not enough, especially when Yi Shiwen used the chi and blood almost without restraint, so the whole scene seemed to be almost a one-sided massacre. In between the shadows of his fists, all the lightning troops were smashed on the spot, and the energy that filled the sky was also absorbed by him, used by him to nourish himself. And as he refined more and more chi and blood, the power in his body also became stronger. His cultivation was still constantly improving, and slowly, he had touched the barrier that belonged to the myth realm. Boom! No one knew how much time had passed and how long he had killed, but finally, the breath on Yi Shiwen's body directly spread out, and he suddenly stepped into the myth realm. He had become a mythical expert through and through. For ordinary people, this transformation was extremely difficult, but for him, it was just a matter of time. He, who had already transformed his primordial spirit, was only half a step away from becoming a true mythical expert. It was just that he still had to refine all the chi and blood in his body. Otherwise, if he wanted to advance, it would be even easier, almost no difficulty. His realm directly stepped into the first level of the Pawang realm, but it did not stop there. As he continued to refine the chi and blood, his cultivation was actually still increasing. And with the increase of his cultivation, the speed at which he refined the chi and blood became even faster, almost at lightning speed, all the way to the first level of the Pawang realm. So strong, so fast. In the true martial realm, when the six-legged spider saw this scene, he could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. He was also at the peak of the first level of the Pawang realm, so he was very clear about how difficult it was after stepping into the Pawang realm. He did not know how many years of cultivation it had taken to truly step into the first level of the Pawang realm, but Yi Shiwen actually did it so easily. He was simply a monster. Chapter 2054. If he was originally dissatisfied with Yi Shiwen, then after Yi Shiwen slaughtered so many legendary experts, he became completely obedient. That was especially true of the three-peak god myths. As far as he was concerned, they were all legendary figures. And although they were all god myths, the difference between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. They couldn't even be mentioned in the same breath. Such figures were almost no different from gods. But even so, they were still defeated by Yi Shiwen. Moreover, it was a crushing defeat. One could imagine how much this matter shocked him. How could he dare to have any disloyal thoughts towards Yi Shiwen? The fact that Yi Shiwen was transcending his tribulation scared him even more. Everyone who reached the god myth level was a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering hero, and all of them transcended heterogeneous heavenly tribulations. But compared to Yi Shiwen's, the heterogeneous heavenly tribulation he had transcended paled in comparison. They weren't even on the same level. Such a heavenly tribulation of earth, fire, water, and wind. Not to mention seeing it. He had never even heard of it. So, he could not tell what kind of heavenly tribulation Yi Shiwen was facing. However, the only thing he knew was that such a person was definitely a peerless genius. His future achievements were limitless. Perhaps he could really step into the realm of gods and become an immortal god. If that was the case, following such a peerless genius would naturally bring him a lot of benefits. It was better than working hard on his own. To the outside world, He was a legendary expert who could call the wind and summon the rain. But only he knew the bitterness in his heart. In the legendary realm, he was just an ordinary person. He was even at the bottom. He had no prestige at all. If he could put aside the resentment of being beaten by Yi Shiwen and follow such a figure, it would naturally be good. He had a judgment in his heart. He was just a normal person. How could a normal person be compared to a monster like Yi Shiwen? Thinking of this, his mood suddenly became much better. Yi Shiwen's qi and blood were still boiling. After entering the legendary realm, his strength had made earth-shaking progress. It was almost at a different level from when he was in the profound death realm. Although he was able to reach the peak of the first level of Paong, he had to rely on various secret techniques and means. But now, he could feel that he could shatter a star with one punch, and he could almost destroy the existence of the peak of the second heaven of the Wang realm with his bare hands. If the state of the five emperors and the state of the martial arts incarnation were taken into account, then he could even compare to the existence of the third heaven of the Wang realm. The surging energy in his body made him want to roar loudly. He directly opened his mouth and swallowed the remaining heavenly tribulation, transforming it into his own strength. No matter how terrifying the power of the heavenly tribulation was, it was useless. It was completely subdued by him. However, he was still a little depressed. After he stepped into the peak of the first heaven of the Paong realm, the heaven's retribution had ended and no new heaven's retribution was born. It was not enough for him to use the power of the heaven's test to continue refining the blood essence. He had originally planned to break into the second heaven of the Paong realm in one fell swoop, but now there was no other way. However, with the Paong realm, he was also a true legendary master. If he wanted to refine the blood essence, although it would still take some time, it was not as difficult as when he was still in the profound death realm. His body had begun to gradually produce divinity. Almost at the moment when the heaven's retribution disappeared, it began to produce his own divinity. Suddenly, a look of joy appeared on his face. One must know that although he could nurture divinity, he could only do so with the help of a special God-level power technique. He could not produce divinity by himself. After hundreds of years of refinement, the divinity that was nurtured had long been integrated with him. But after all, it was not his own divinity, but that of the demon gods. It was impossible to achieve 100% compatibility with him. This was not very serious in the past, but as he fought against more and more powerful opponents, this became more and more fatal. Especially when the opponent also had divinity, it was even more so. Now that he had produced his own divinity, it was different. Divinity was an ability that only gods could have, and it was the root of the immortality of gods. At the moment when divinity was produced, he could almost feel that some of the hidden injuries in his body were slowly recovering under the nourishment of divinity. The body of a god was perfect, and it was impossible for such hidden injuries to exist, and divinity was the biggest key. And when this divinity was used in conjunction with the Phoenix regeneration technique, the effect was even more amazing. Legend. This is the power that belongs to the legend. Abyss Demon Lord, wait for me. His eyes became unusually sharp. After stepping into the Paong realm, he was one step closer to the Abyss Demon Lord, but he could increasingly feel the gap between himself and the Abyss Demon Lord. If one did not really step into the legend realm, one could not truly understand how terrifying a legend realm expert was. Of course, for him to be able to defeat a legend realm expert at the peak of the profound death realm, it was simply a super genius that only appeared once in 10,000 years. It could not be calculated based on the situation of ordinary people. After withdrawing the heaven's retribution, Yi Shiwen immediately felt that there were already many experts spying on him. He remained calm, and layers of golden waves appeared under his feet. In an instant, he had already disappeared in front of everyone. Then, he returned to the true martial school. "Little brother, are you okay? Did you pass the heaven's retribution of the Paong realm?" Huang Wuji rushed over immediately. In the true martial school, he was the only one who knew about Yi Shiwen's background. When everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was going to fight to the death, only he knew that Yi Shiwen had borrowed the body of a puppet and did not fight personally. However, He also knew that Yi Shiwen had completely entered the puppet's body with his spirit. When the puppet's body collapsed, his spirit would immediately collapse as well. Originally, he thought that it was just some ordinary legend realm experts, so he was not too worried. However, with the appearance of Shi Wuming and the other two, he was also in despair. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen had exhausted all of his energy, and his body collapsed on the spot. He was in despair. Who knew that Yi Shiwen did not die? On the contrary, he gained great benefits and directly broke into the Paong realm in one breath. After Yi Shiwen's explanation, he also truly understood how terrifying the legend realm experts of the Paong realm were. It was simply earth-shattering. The strongest group of people under the gods were also the group of people closest to the gods. He also felt that earth-shattering heaven's retribution, and also knew that Yi Shiwen was inside. Now that he finally saw that Yi Shiwen had passed the legend heaven's retribution, his heart was also extremely happy. Although the true martial school already had the six-legged spider monster guarding, it was still an outsider after all. How could it be compared to such a considerate person like the little brother? Well, I have already passed it. Yi Shiwen nodded and said. He did not hide it, and his face was also full of smiles. After entering the legend realm, his vision suddenly opened up, and it was no longer the same as before. Demigod was the best title. That's great. In this case, those people will not dare to touch our true martial school. Huang Wuji said happily. Well, although there are still some hidden powerful experts, I think no one will dare to come for a short time. Yi Shiwen said. As long as the news of him killing more than 30 legend realm experts spread, perhaps the entire Xian world would be shocked, and there would not be many people who would dare to come to the true martial school to find trouble. It could be temporarily quiet for a while. Let's not talk about this first. Big brother, I said before that I want you to go to the ancient wilderness. Have you considered it? Yi Shiwen asked. His gaze was fixed on Huang Wuji. He knew very well that Huang Wuji's talent was extremely high. Compared to those top geniuses in the Xian world, he was not the slightest bit inferior. If he had grown up in the Xian world, his current achievements would not be inferior to the Celestial Fox Young Master and the others. It was a pity that he was limited to the true martial domain. The laws of the true martial domain were incomplete, and it was impossible for him to cultivate to a higher realm. Even if it was possible, with the situation of the true martial school, it was not enough to support Huang Wuji's rapid growth. Only in the fiercest competition could people have amazing progress. Yi Shiwen, who was also in the same situation, was very clear about this. Without those years of polishing in the ancient wilderness in the Xian world, how could he rush all the way to the legend realm in such a short time? If it was hundreds of years ago, he would not even dare to think about it. Except for him, those who entered the legend realm, without exception, were thousands of years old, or even tens of thousands of years old. They were not at the same level as him. Huang Wuji was also very tempted. As a person with great talent and bold vision, naturally, he was not willing to die of old age in this true martial school. If he did not know about it before, it would be fine. Now that there was a role model like Yi Shiwen in front of him, how could his heart not be tempted? In the past, Yi Shiwen was just a little stronger than him. After hundreds of years, Yi Shiwen had grown to a level that he was not even qualified to look up to. It was just that the true martial school involved too much of his effort, and he could not rest assured. Yi Shiwen glanced at him and knew what he was thinking. He could not help but say, if senior brother is worried about the true martial school, then you don't have to. You can let senior brother's disciple take over the true martial school. During this period of time, there have been many talents in the true martial school. Are you afraid that you can't find a qualified successor? Junior brother is right. I am thinking too much. Huang Wuji was not a hesitant person, and he immediately made up his mind. Chapter 2055. This was his plan. In fact, he also had deep feelings for the true martial school, especially for Huang Wuji and the others. Their talents were excellent, not inferior to the young master of the Heavenly Fox and the others. It was really a waste to waste them in the true martial school. He wanted to provide them with a broader stage. Only by standing at a higher height could they have a better chance of growth. Through this incident, he also thought about it. The last time the true martial school was in trouble, he happened to be there. This time, he still saved the true martial school. But what about next time and the time after that? Would he have to personally take action every time? If he was not careful, the true martial school would be destroyed. Since this universe was discovered by the people in the Xian world, it was an unchangeable fact that various forces would enter this universe. Now that there were only a few experts to explore the way, the next step would be for the various forces to enter this universe. He could not stay in the true martial school forever. What about the next time? It was better to rely on oneself than on others. He understood this principle very well. Therefore, the idea of cultivating a group of experts in the true martial school was born. If Huang Wuji could also fully mature, Yi Shiwen would not need to worry so much. Moreover, he could not bear to let Huang Wuji and the others waste their talents and die of old age in the true martial school. In addition to Huang Wuji, there were some people who were also the targets of his observation. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he could bring all of them into the ancient wilderness. In the future, when this group of people grew up, they could also become his helpers. Although he could not see them now, they were a batch of seeds with unlimited benefits in the future. Just as he was thinking about who to bring into the ancient wilderness, the news of him killing dozens of legendary experts finally spread. As soon as this news spread, it immediately caused an uproar in the entire Xian world. In the beginning, no one believed this fact because it was too ridiculous. It was simply impossible. Dozens of legendary experts, not just a few. Even if it was a few, he should not be able to deal with them. Just killing a legendary expert at the first level of the Paoang realm was already unbelievable enough. In many people's hearts, Yi Shiwen was almost a peerless hero in the world. But no matter how strong a hero was, being able to achieve such a level was already the limit. But no one expected that he could actually kill dozens of myth experts. Seeing this, the world was simply shocked. Dozens of legendary experts, even a colossus like the Heaven Wasteland Temple, was nothing more than this. Just like that, all of them died in Yi Shiwen's hands. If it were the Heaven Wasteland Temple and the Divine Union who were against Yi Shiwen, they would probably collapse on the spot. Although attacking the headquarters of forces like the Heaven Wasteland Palace was not the same as setting up an ambush and killing many mythical experts, this did not prevent people from making such a comparison. After all, there were 3 peak mythical experts among the experts that were killed. Even though they could not compare to a peerless figure like the Divine Union's leader, they were still figures that countless people had to look up to. However, they had actually died in Yi Shiwen's hands. As the details were continuously revealed, everyone was stunned. Some people even admired Yi Shiwen. Regardless of what kind of secret technique he had used, or even the use of a formation, he had dared to face dozens of legendary experts. This already required a lot of courage. Furthermore, he had actually succeeded. This was simply a miracle. In an instant, the Xian world was shaken. Yi Shiwen's prestige had immediately surpassed those geniuses who had once been on par with him. If those geniuses and some old antiques had relied on their profound cultivation and age to view them as young juniors, then Yi Shiwen had already shocked everyone and made them not dare to underestimate him. Even those old antiques did not feel that he had killed a peak legendary expert. Even among those old antiques, those peak legendary experts were invincible figures. However, they had been killed by Yi Shiwen. Didn't this mean that Yi Shiwen already possessed the ability to threaten them? Although he had used a secret technique, it was already enough to make people have a whole new level of respect for him. Many people could not help but feel sympathy for the death of a rabbit. They were also old antiques who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. Yet they had actually been killed by a young junior who had only cultivated for a few hundred years. Regardless of the reason, it still made people feel somewhat disappointed. In the Yangtze River, the waves behind push the waves in front, and the waves in front die on the beach. This seemed to gradually become a reality, a cruel fact that people had no choice but to face. This was a fact that no one could avoid. Originally, there had been news that Yi Shiwen had exhausted all his essence and blood in this battle, and that his flesh had already collapsed. Many people who had been watching the battle from afar had seen this with their own eyes. This was indeed true. How could Yi Shiwen not have paid a corresponding price for such a great battle? This was also believed by everyone. If one were to say that Yi Shiwen had not paid a price, then wouldn't the heavens be blind? Many people sighed with emotion. A peerless heavens pride expert had only had enough time to let out the most dazzling brilliance of his life, and then died in a hurry. This was truly a pity. But soon, even more incredible news came out. Not only had Yi Shiwen not died, but he had also passed the heavenly tribulation and entered the legendary realm. People did not believe it at first, but then the images spread out. Yi Shiwen's heroic appearance was like that of a god, which made everyone believe that he had not died. On the contrary, he had become even more powerful. The scene of the heavenly tribulation made countless self-proclaimed geniuses tremble with fear. They had never heard of such a heavenly tribulation, let alone seen it. It was simply unprecedented. It was unknown whether those experts who had proved their way had also gone through such a terrible heavenly tribulation when they were young. If they were in Yi Shiwen's shoes, they would not be able to withstand such a heavenly tribulation, let alone enter the legendary realm in such a domineering manner. Many experts of the older generation spoke one after another. Based on such a powerful heavenly tribulation, Yi Shiwen's combat strength would probably rise to a shocking level after entering the legendary realm. After all, it was no secret that he had defeated an expert at the first level of the Paong realm with the body of a profound death realm. He was only at the peak of the profound death realm, but he could already defeat an expert at the first level of the Paong realm. Now that he had entered the first level of the Paong realm, it was unimaginable to what extent his strength had increased. As he entered the legendary realm, Yi Shiwen became the third person of the younger generation to enter the legendary realm and enter the public's view. Those who had designs on him immediately gave up. What a joke! Even if he did not take into account the secret technique that did not have any side effects, even with his true strength, he was already a genuine legendary figure. How many people would dare to have designs on such an existence? What Yi Shiwen hadn't expected was that this incident would have a very shocking deterrent effect on many powerful mythological peak existences. Because of the wanted order jointly set up by the Heaven Wasteland Palace and the Divine Alliance, and the mysterious experts added fuel to the fire, many old monsters at the 7th, 8th, and even 9th layer of the Paong realm were eager to take his head in exchange for rewards. Now, they were all frightened and did not dare to move. That secret technique was just too shocking. They could not think of any secret technique that could allow a person to rise from the peak of the profound death realm to the peak of the myth realm. It was a huge leap. If it was just the secret technique that was terrifying, it would not be a big deal. Having cultivated to this level, they were very knowledgeable and had seen all kinds of shocking things. The most terrifying thing was that after Yi Shiwen had used such a shocking secret technique, he had actually entered the tribulation transcendent state unscathed and directly entered the myth realm. This was what they were most afraid of. A terrifying secret technique that did not have any side effects was enough to scare them away. Besides the old man with the fleshy wings, Sure Wuming and the serene demon Flaming Ape had once made a name for themselves in the mysterious world. They had turned the world upside down, and many people had died because of them. Although the old man with the fleshy wings was unknown, he could not be a simple person to be able to enter the peak of the myth realm. How could they not be frightened when such a peerless, inauspicious star had died at Yi Shiwen's hands? They did not want to become the next one. Unless they understood Yi Shiwen's background, they would not casually make a move. There was even news that the leader of the Divine Alliance, who had originally planned to personally take action, had stopped because of this. Although this was only one of the rumors that had spread like wildfire, it was enough to show how big of a wave Yi Shiwen's matter had caused in the mysterious world. Although this wasn't Yi Shiwen's plan, it was still a complete fluke. Because of this matter, many old freaks who had originally planned to take action stopped. They were completely frightened. At the same time, the extraterrestrial visitors who had been wreaking havoc in the mysterious world suddenly discovered that two great malefic stars had appeared in the universe. One was a star colossus, which was extremely ferocious, and the mysterious realm experts who had been causing trouble were simply no match for it. They were all swallowed in one gulp. There was also a Kuan Pong with a wingspan of tens of thousands of miles. When it attacked, countless people would die. At first, people didn't notice. But as more and more people died, and people began to know about it. All of a sudden, it caused a huge uproar. Many people didn't take a fancy to this backward and desolate land. Who would have thought that such a mythological beast actually existed? Suddenly, more and more people came to hunt the mythological beast. Chapter 2056. Normally, some creatures with the bloodline of primordial fierce beasts were not enough to make these powerful figures lose their composure. For them, it was nothing. If one day they could prove their Tao, then even in the ancient times where there were many experts and monsters, they would still belong to the ranks of the strong. But these two were extraordinary. Star Beast. Even among the many primordial fierce beasts, it had made a great name for itself. Not to mention Kuan Peng, a well-known and powerful fierce beast. It was the leader of the 10 primordial fierce beasts, the ancestor of all demons. And most importantly, Kuan Peng was not as powerful as the dragon and phoenix races. Although these races were powerful, they were also dissolute by nature. Their subspecies could be seen everywhere. These subspecies also formed their own huge composition, forming their own huge world. In other words, whenever a Kuan Peng appeared, it must be a purebred Kuan Peng. This attracted the attention of many experts. Many big shots in the myth realm said that they wanted to take this Kuan Peng as a mount. In this era, being able to subdue a Kuan Peng as a mount was naturally very awe-inspiring. Not to mention, when Kuan Peng grew to the limit, it was simply an unparalleled killing machine. For a moment, many experts were attracted by the Kuan Peng, especially those myth realm experts. They chased in the direction of Kuan Peng and returned to the Xian world. The remaining Xian realm experts were no match for the Star Beast. They were swallowed in large batches. Moreover, the more Xian realm experts it swallowed, the faster the Star Beast's strength grew. Soon, it had grown to the third heaven of the Paoang realm. This caused many Xian realm experts to panic. At this time, there was also a rumor among the extraterrestrial visitors. That was, Kuan Peng and Star Beast were simply the pets of a legendary big shot who had been living in seclusion for a long time. They might even be the pets of the legendary gods. This was a warning to them. If they continued to kill unscrupulously like this, they might face the attack of this powerful reclusive powerhouse. When this news came out, the visitors from outer space fell into panic. They took a closer look and found that it was true. Among those visitors from outer space, only those who committed crimes and slaughtered the world everywhere were swallowed by Kuan Peng and Star Beast. As long as the others did not follow them, they would be fine. In this way, many people were relieved. After all, not everyone was crazy enough to slaughter this indigenous world. Some people didn't believe it, but they were quickly swallowed by the Star Beast. They didn't even have the power to fight back. Even if some experts from the big forces invited the legend experts from their sects, they couldn't stop the Star Beast at all. Those with low strength would be swallowed by it, and those with high strength wouldn't be able to stop the Star Beast from breaking out of its encirclement. It was one of the legendary ancient vicious beasts. In addition, Yi Shiwen would also secretly take action. For a time, this madness was completely stopped. This allowed the various worlds to finally breathe a sigh of relief. They would not face such a crisis of direct destruction. Since these worlds were obviously guarded by powerhouses, these people's attention had finally shifted to the battlefield of gods. Yi Shiwen didn't care about this. He had explored a little bit, but he had only explored the periphery. For him at that time, this was undoubtedly a dangerous place. Now, he was qualified to go and explore to find out the truth. However, he was not in a hurry. The exploration of this place, known as the Graveyard of the Gods, had just begun. He was not in a hurry to join in. On the contrary, he needed more time to refine the majestic blood essence in his body. Heaven's retribution had dispersed too early. There was no way to use Heaven's retribution to refine it completely. It would take time to refine it with his own strength. He did not have much time. 7 years. He only had 7 years. Now, the Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace still had their concerns. However, after 7 years, he would graduate from the nameless Tao College and would inevitably face crazy suppression from both sides. Even the leader of the Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace Master would personally take action. Therefore, he did not have much time. He had to strive to improve his strength to a whole new level before graduation. Moreover, compared to the Divine Union and the Heaven Wasteland Palace, the Abyss Demon Master was a bigger threat. He did not know when he would finish healing and enter the Tao Validation realm in one go. This threat was like a sharp sword hanging above his head, forcing him to be careful at all times. A year passed in the blink of an eye. More than a year had passed since everyone discovered the graveyard of the gods. Just as Yi Shiwen expected, the experts were only the vanguard. As the experts from various worlds entered the universe, the entire universe became lively once again. However, the human race was originally a high and mighty existence in this universe. Now, they had suddenly become a marginalized race. Even if no one dared to massacre the human race on a large scale due to the so-called mysterious experts' deterrence, it did not mean that the human race was any better. These alien races did not have a good attitude towards the human race. Some worlds had even become slaves to the alien races. Some forces did not make it so obvious, but in reality, they had deeply infiltrated into the human race. Facing these forces that had infiltrated the human race, these human sects had no means of retaliating. After all, the strongest among them was only in the transcendent realm. They were as weak as ants. If it wasn't for the fact that they were afraid of the mysterious expert that did not exist, they wouldn't even have such treatment. However, these were all done subtly. What truly caught everyone's attention was the existence of the graveyard of the gods. With the arrival of many experts from various forces, more and more information was analyzed about the graveyard of the gods. It turned out that the graveyard of the gods was originally an ordinary place. However, after the gods were buried here, it became a land of death. The gods themselves were the noblest creatures and noblest existences in the world. Their deaths would even shake the heavens and earth. At the place where they died, countless laws would automatically form a natural spiritual cave. These spiritual caves absorb the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth, turning into a terrifying array with shocking might. Without any special method, one could only enter it. Moreover, almost all of the gods were buried in this place. The spiritual caves were connected to each other. Feng Shui and Shui were intertwined, forming a massive spiritual cave array that operated in an inexplicable manner. Some almighty figures had calculated before. Even if a god wanted to forcefully barge into the graveyard of the gods, they would be suppressed to death by the energy left behind by the gods. Not only did it contain the remnant power of the gods, but it was also protected by heaven and earth. Because of the power of heaven and earth, it was impossible to break through. Of course, there was no shortage of spell formation masters among the various organizations, and many of them were god myths with heaven-shaking, earth-shattering cultivation bases. Their skill in the Tao of spell formations was so profound that they could break ordinary spell formations with ease. And yet, it had taken them more than a year to work together to break a spell formation like this one, and they were finally starting to figure out a way to break it. If they wanted to break through the spell formation, it would be suicidal. However, if they could find the eye of the spell formation, they would be able to break through it one by one. Of course, it wasn't going to be easy. It took them more than a year to figure out a general direction. However, there were more than 20 spirit caves in that area, and among those tombs, there was one that was the true core of the formation. In order to break the formation, one would have to rely on the core of the formation. Only by breaking through the eye of the spell formation could they truly break through the spell formation. However, there were more than 20 tombs, so it was very difficult to figure it out. But even so, they finally found the eye of the spell formation with the support of all the major forces. This was the tomb of a demon clan god. No one knew who the Demon King was, but after learning this news, the demon clan, which was originally deserted, suddenly became crowded. Many people wanted to know some information about this demon clan god. Only in this way could they make it through and break through the next series of tombs. Only then could they obtain the boundless wealth and the wealth related to the Tao confirming realm. This news even reached the ears of Yi Shiwen, who was still in the true martial domain. The first tomb of the gods was about to open. He would not let such a big thing go easily. However, although there were some clues, no one could tell when they would break through the spell formation. After all, this involved the legendary gods. It was normal for there to be no clues for hundreds or thousands of years. However, these behemoths were not ordinary. In fact, there were even immortal inheritances from other worlds intervening, bringing the experience belonging to the gods and joining the effort to break through the level. If it was an ordinary tomb of the gods, it would naturally not be so difficult. It was just that so many tombs of the gods were buried together, forming a terrifying group of tombs of the gods. The tomb of the little demon god was one of them. Many forces in the Xian world joined forces to break through, but they were strangled by this spell formation. They lost more than half of their forces. This time, they naturally did not dare to break through. The arrival of a person made Yi Shiwen unable to sit still and ignore it. "Big brother, save my father." When Leo appeared in true martial school again, it was completely beyond Yi Shiwen's expectation. Leah hugged him. Yi Shiwen could feel that even though Leah's growth was far slower than ordinary people, she was no longer a little girl at this time. However, the news that Leah brought next made him frown. Chapter 2057. Big brother, father is trapped in the divine Dan realm, said Leah anxiously. They're all monsters. If it wasn't for my cultivation being unable to enter the Paong realm, father wouldn't have to take the risk to go to the divine Dan realm to obtain the divine pellets for me. After comforting the anxious Leah, Yi Shiwen found out from her that the divine Dan realm wasn't an ordinary place. It was a rather famous place among the many worlds. There was once a god-level expert, and there was more than one of them. However, it was said that they offended a powerful figure, and the pill deity perished. The entire divine Dan realm was sealed, and no one knew where it went. Recently, the divine Dan realm had reappeared. The divine Dan realm was established by an old ancestor who was proficient in alchemy. There were countless divine pellets in the divine Dan realm. Li Feng somehow found out about the divine Dan realm and found the entrance to the divine Dan realm. He even personally led his people there. Although Li Ya's improvement over the years was still very fast, she was stuck in the legend realm. It wasn't because she wasn't talented enough, but it was the same for her clan. If there weren't any special encounters, it would be difficult for them to overcome it. However, once they overcome it, they would be able to enter the doctrine-confirming realm. In the past, when their clan was still around, there was still a way. However, their clan had already perished. Leah couldn't get any help from her clan. As such, Li Feng could only take the risk to obtain a type of divine pellet in the divine Dan realm. With this divine pellet, Leah could improve further. However, who could have predicted that the divine Dan world would be sealed off for countless years? The inside of the divine Dan world had long since changed. Many of the medicinal pills that had been sealed within the divine Dan world had developed their own sentience and cultivated into pill demons. In a single breath, they occupied the entire divine Dan world and established a pill demon kingdom. Li Feng was caught off guard and was trapped within. He was trapped by the most powerful demonic pellet array, which wanted to refine him alive. The group was completely annihilated. Only Leah managed to escape. Leah, who was alone, could only look for Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen frowned. He originally thought that Li Feng's strength was only in the transcendent realm. However, he didn't think so anymore. From the old Alliance Master's shocking strength, Li Feng, who was able to establish the Southern Dipper and fight against the old Alliance Master for countless years, wasn't a simple figure. Otherwise, how could he have created the Southern Dipper and resisted for so many years? Even with his strength, he was still trapped in the divine Dan realm. He was afraid that the divine Dan realm was truly a tiger's den. Divine Dan realm. Who would have thought that the Divine Dan realm would still exist? Suddenly, Yi Mo's voice resounded in Yi Shiwen's mind. Yi Shiwen, you can't let go of this opportunity. The Divine Dan world is a good place. What is that place? Yi Shiwen asked. It seemed that Yi Mo knew about it. That was a long time ago. This pill god was a famous deity expert under the Alchemy Emperor's faction. He even obtained the Alchemy Emperor's direct inheritance. However, it was said that he had a falling out with the Alchemy Emperor and betrayed the Alchemy Emperor. He formed his own Divine Dan world and became famous for a period of time. After that, the experts sent by the Alchemy Emperor chased after him and killed the pill god. After that, the Divine Dan world disappeared. It seemed that the Alchemy Emperor had used some powerful means to conceal it. No one could find the whereabouts of the pill god. Who would have thought that he would appear now? Yi Mo said in amazement. The reason why I know so clearly is that at that time, the Lord wanted to subdue the pill god and serve the demon race. Unfortunately, although the pill god betrayed the demon race, he refused to be recruited by all the forces and established his own faction. In the end, he was annihilated by the experts of the Alchemy Emperor's faction. He could be considered a character. At that time, the Lord had been paying attention to the Divine Dan world. The pill god was very powerful. At that time, he was already a peak expert. Among the many disciples of the Alchemy Emperor's faction, the pill god was undoubtedly the strongest. Even when facing the siege of many experts, he did not fall into a disadvantageous position. Later, the Alchemy Emperor personally attacked and killed him. You can imagine how powerful he was? Just from the title, Yi Shiwen could tell that the pill god was another powerful emperor, an existence that could only be killed by an emperor personally. Even among the experts of the Alchemy Emperor's faction, the pill god was extremely powerful. No wonder Yi Mo told him not to let the Divine Dan world off. Although the Divine Dan world was annihilated by the Alchemy Emperor's faction, the Alchemy Emperor did not take back the Divine Dan world. On the contrary, he personally took action and concealed the heavenly secrets so that no one could find the whereabouts of the Divine Dan world. I didn't expect that Li Feng would actually find it. What a great opportunity, said Yi Mo. Now that your cultivation has entered the myth realm, ordinary elixirs have no effect on you. However, the elixirs refined by the pill god are different. He is an expert of the Tao. The elixirs refined by him are useful even for experts of the Tao, let alone you. Do you know what the most important thing is? The most important thing is that the pill god is crazy about elixirs. He actually enlightened the 3 divine grade elixirs he refined and even cultivated them to the point of Tao. It can be said to be a miracle. Later on, the 3 disciples of the Divine Dan world were all destroyed along with him. Their intelligence was erased. However, for some reason, they were not retrieved by the pill god. At that time, I was following the Lord and saw very clearly that the 3 disciples of the Divine Dan world had all disappeared along with the Divine Dan world. If you can find any one of them and let me devour it, I will soon be able to refine the body of the Lord of Darkness. At that time, I will be able to compete with the Abyssal Demon Lord with just my body alone. Moreover, after refining this elixir, I will soon be able to recover to the Tao. At that time, even if the Abyssal Demon Lord has proven his Tao, he will not be able to kill me. Hiss! Yi Shiwen took a deep breath. For him, it was extremely difficult to prove his Tao. However, the elixirs that were enlightened by the pill god had cultivated to the Tao realm. The strength of the pill god was simply unimaginable. However, such a person was killed by the pill emperor. The tyrannical combat power of the emperor level completely stunned him. A real man should be like this. This sentence flashed in his mind. It was as if it had grown roots and was firmly rooted in his mind. However, at the same time, what Yi Mo said was also a great temptation for him. Previously, when he borrowed the flesh of the ancient ancestor sect leader, it was not just a battle. More importantly, he almost felt the power that belonged to the peak of the mythical realm in advance. The laws that belonged to the peak of the mythical realm were completely different from before. If it wasn't for the fact that the power of the heavens' retribution was insufficient, He could even use the huge amount of essence and blood to advance further. However, if he could enter the divine Dan realm and plunder those elixirs and devour them all, his cultivation would advance further and reach a whole new realm. It was almost equivalent to saving countless years of bitter cultivation. However, the situation that Leah said also made him frown slightly. In the divine Dan realm, it was obvious that a whole new world had evolved. There were countless experts in it, and they could even think of ways to trap Li Feng. Big brother, father is now trapped in there and is in danger. What should we do? Leah's eyes were filled with tears. No matter how she was in the eyes of outsiders, in front of Yi Shiwen, she was just a little girl who would never grow up. Let's go first. We'll talk as we go, Yi Shiwen said, but don't worry. With Mr. Li's strength, there shouldn't be any problems in a short period of time. You don't have to worry too much. And Leah nodded. She naturally believed what Yi Shiwen said. She was just confused because she was worried. After thinking about it carefully, it was impossible for Li Feng to be born so soon. Over the years, she was no longer the little girl in front of Yi Shiwen in the past. She had also experienced a lot over the years, and was no longer a flower in a greenhouse. Yi Shiwen immediately did not hesitate. After informing Huang Wuji, he directly began to head in the direction of the divine Dan realm with Leah. The divine Dan realm was also in the depths of the void of countless worlds. With Yi Shiwen's strength, it was almost as if he was tearing the space apart to hurry on his journey. His speed couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. Even if he was carrying Leah, he could still travel tens of thousands of miles in an instant. Even so, he crazily rushed all the way and walked for a full month. Only then did he barely reach the surroundings of the divine Dan realm. And this world was already very far away from the Xian world. This was a brand new universe. Along the way, he was crazily rushing along, flying wildly along the space coordinates that Leah told him. He did not pay attention to how many worlds he had passed through along the way. However, when they reached the vicinity of the divine Dan realm, they discovered that things were far more complicated than they had imagined. As time passed, the divine Dan realm was originally found by Li Feng through some unknown means. However, as the divine Dan realm reappeared, the technique that concealed the divine Dan realm also disappeared. The divine Dan realm that had disappeared for countless years reappeared in front of the world. After receiving the news, many experts in the vicinity rushed over, not daring to relax in the slightest. According to the calculations of some experts, this time, the divine Dan world was summoned from the distant void by some unknown power. However, this power would soon disappear. At most, in a few years' time, the divine Dan world would once again disappear from the void. Thus, many experts who wanted to obtain the divine pellets of the divine Dan world came one after another, not daring to waste any time. For a moment, the entire world near the divine Dan realm suddenly became lively. Mythical experts who were rarely seen on normal days actually appeared one after another. Yi Shiwen frowned. This was not good. With the intervention of these mythical experts, the situation became even more complicated. Chapter 2058. As the news spread, more and more experts gathered in the vicinity of the divine Dan realm. Many of them were realm lords of the various realms. They were of noble status and could create storms with their hands. In the absence of deities, they were practically the most powerful existences in the various realms. The arrival of these experts made the entire situation even more complicated. The primordial chaos continent was the core area where countless experts gathered in this universe. Even the rarely seen mythical experts would appear here from time to time. It was extremely prosperous. The primordial chaos pavilion was a pavilion that pierced straight into the sky. It was tens of thousands of meters tall and towered above the sky. Clouds and mist lingered around it, making it impossible to see the true appearance of the primordial chaos pavilion. An incomparably huge market formed around the primordial chaos pavilion. This market was shrouded in an incomparably huge formation. The entire formation was in operation at all times, forcing warriors to enter through special entrances. It was impossible for ordinary people to break through the entire formation. Yi Shiwen and Leah did not enter the Divine Dan realm directly. The current situation was much more complicated than what they had initially expected. With the arrival of experts from various aspects, he had no choice but to be careful and scout out the situation first. According to his calculations, it was impossible for Li Feng to die in such a short period of time. Along the way, people came and went, appearing extremely prosperous. Yi Shiwen and Leah had just landed when an attendant came forward and said, "I'm sorry, young masters and young mistresses. This place is not free to the public. If you want to enter, you have to pay 10 Xian pills." Yi Shiwen directly threw out 20 Xian pills, then directly walked in with Leah. The entire market was extremely huge. It was unknown how many miles in radius it was. It could even be said that the entire primordial chaos continent itself was a super huge market. With the primordial chaos pavilion as the center, it was the core of the entire market. There were all kinds of heavenly treasures in it. Experts from the nearby realms would come here, either to set up stalls or to purchase the heavenly treasures they needed. Due to the huge scale, all kinds of heavenly treasures were available. Many heavenly treasures that were extremely difficult to find could be found here. 100,000-year-old mysterious crystal. Now it's only 100,000 Xian pills. Cheap and good. 30,000-year-old ginseng has already gained sentience. After consuming it, one's power will increase greatly. Don't miss this opportunity. Yi Shiwen and Leah could hear all kinds of shouts. For a time, there were hundreds and thousands of shouts coming in at the same time. These peddlers were also powerful warriors. They used a special method to shout to ensure that the shouts would not disappear halfway. An ordinary person would probably be annoyed to death to deal with hundreds or even thousands of peddlers at the same time. However, with his cultivation, it was not difficult for him to deal with these peddlers at the same time. However, these peddlers were not what he wanted. He had already stepped into the Paong realm, and as a legendary expert, many of the treasures that could be considered as heavenly treasures in the past were of no use to him now. "Senior, is this your first time on the Primal Chaos continent?" Suddenly, a crisp voice was heard. Yi Shiwen swept out with his divine sense and discovered that a beautiful woman was standing behind him. She was wearing a green dress and looked quite refined. Her face was full of smiles, and it seemed to make people feel better. "Yes." Yi Shiwen nodded. "But how do you know?" Leo also looked at this woman curiously and couldn't help but feel a little strange. "It's very easy to tell. The way Senior is looking around, it's obviously your first time here. If you've been here a few times, you won't be like this," the woman said with a smile. "I'm Ruashi. I don't know if Senior needs a guide. I grew up in this nearby world, and I'm also very familiar with this generation." "Very familiar?" Yi Shiwen's heart moved. He originally intended to refuse, but he swallowed his words. "I don't know if you know anything about the Divine Dan realm that has just appeared." "So Senior is also here for the Divine Dan realm," Ruashi said with a smile. Although she said it as if she had suddenly realized something, it was actually not that strange. "If you want to talk about this, I know a little." "May I know what Senior wants to know?" Ruashi asked. "Do you know about the specific situation?" Yi Shiwen asked. "I don't know much about this, but I can introduce you to a place, and you will know everything there." Ruashi immediately said, "Where?" "This, Senior, we have a rule in this business. If you want us to be a guide, you need to pay at least 1,000 Xiandong." "I don't know. Can you give it to me first?" Ruashi looked at Yi Shiwen in a somewhat embarrassed manner, but her eyes were still looking at Yi Shiwen. "Here you go." Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate and directly threw the Xiandong to Ruashi. "These are just a small fortune. It's the primordial origin building in front of us. In fact, the primordial origin building is the biggest force in our primordial mainland. It is also a famous and huge force in this world. It also sells some information. If Senior wants to know something about the Divine Dan realm, then it's best to go to the primordial origin building." Ruashi suddenly smiled as she received the Xiandong. She rolled her eyes and looked at this extravagant nouveau riche. Her heart was slightly moved. 1,000 Xiandong was not a small amount. A person who could casually throw away so much money was definitely a hidden nouveau riche. Unfortunately, she couldn't see through this person's cultivation. She couldn't even see through the cultivation of the girl beside him, so she couldn't determine their strength. One must know that even though she appeared to be eccentric and rather slick, she had already stepped into the profound death stage. Along the way, she had encountered all sorts of people. Even those at the peak of the profound death stage were able to be identified by her with a single glance. However, she couldn't see through the two people in front of her, as if they were two ordinary people without any cultivation. However, could they be ordinary people who could come here? It was obvious that it was impossible. This should have been the most normal thing, but it had instead become their biggest flaw. Coupled with the fact that Yi Shiwen had asked about the Divine Dan realm. The Divine Dan realm had undoubtedly become the hottest topic. Who were the people who paid the most attention to the Divine Dan realm? The weakest were the peerless kings at the peak of the profound death realm. Those who were slightly weaker did not even dare to covet it. Those who truly dared to roam the Divine Dan realm were undoubtedly experts at the Legend realm and above. The identities of the two were almost obvious. Although she couldn't be certain that they were Legend realm experts, they were definitely at the peak of the profound death realm. Thinking of this, her smile became even more radiant. She was only a guide. These battles had nothing to do with her. Primordial origin building? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and looked at the towering primordial origin building. It faintly emitted a treasure aura, but it was sealed within a powerful formation. Clearly, it had been reinforced by an expert. However, he could still tell with a single glance. I'm afraid this primordial origin building is also a treasure, Yi Shiwen said. Senior has good eyesight. The primordial origin building itself is a treasure. It is said to be the personal treasure of the founder of the primordial origin building. Later on, it became the ancestral land of the primordial origin building. It is extremely powerful. Even profound death realm experts cannot act presumptuously in here, Ruashi said with a smile after receiving the 2,000 Xian pills. Although there is such a saying, I have never seen the primordial origin building actually being used. Perhaps it has not reached that stage. Yes. Yi Shiwen nodded. This was very normal. When it was time to use the primordial origin building, the sect would already be facing the invasion of external enemies. It would be on the verge of collapse. Take the true martial school, for example. If they used the true martial stone sword, they would truly face the danger of destruction. Let's go. We'll talk inside, Yi Shiwen said. The three of them were experts with decent martial arts. Although the entrance was extremely far from the primordial origin building, it would only take a few dozen breaths for the three of them who were hurrying on their way. Of course, this was under the condition that they were not hurrying at full speed. Otherwise, it would be far more than that. Yi Shiwen took a glance at the two golden-armored Dao soldiers guarding the primordial origin building. They were actually experts of the profound death realm. Although they were only the weakest of the initial profound death realm, it was still shocking enough. Senior, these two are the elites among the primordial origin building's Dao soldiers. Actually, only the guards at the entrance are so strong. The other places are not so strong. Yi Shiwen was still puzzled. Suddenly, Ruashi's voice sounded in his ears. Only then did he come to a realization. No wonder there were such powerful Dao soldiers guarding this place. Although the Dao soldiers could not be compared to ordinary martial artists, they were undoubtedly the elites among the elites since they could cultivate to the profound death realm. However, they were only used to guard the entrance. Yi Shiwen now understood that they were probably used to intimidate rather than guard the entrance. With two profound death realm experts guarding the entrance, those who wanted to cause trouble would have to think carefully about whether they had the strength and ability to do so. However, it was not a problem for Yi Shiwen. He had already entered the Legend realm. These two profound death realm Dao soldiers could not possibly intimidate him. Liu was also unusually calm. Ruashi was secretly speechless when she saw the unusually calm appearance of the two of them. She thought to herself that she was already frightened by these two profound death stage Dao soldiers when she first came here. The difference in strength between the two parties was obvious. She was even more certain in her heart that Yi Shiwen's deduction was not simple. The three of them quickly entered the primordial origin building. Yi Shiwen immediately felt the pressure of a magic treasure lightly landing on his body. Before he could think further, a slightly frivolous voice sounded from behind him. Chapter 2059. Yi Shiwen looked up and saw another young woman. This woman had a hot figure and was dressed in revealing clothes. Her skin was fair and beautiful, but there was a provocative look on her face. Beside her, a handsome young man was holding her waist. His actions were quite frivolous. The clothes on his chest were slightly loose, and there was a lazy smile on his face, as if he didn't care about anything. Junior sister, I didn't expect you to still be alive. TSK, you are really lucky. The woman in revealing clothes looked at Ruoshi with a smile, as if she was looking at a miracle. Senior sister Ruoqing, there were killers chasing after me. It was your doing, right? Ruoshi's beautiful eyes were filled with anger, as if her anger was about to burst out. What do you think? The woman Ruoqing giggled, shaking like a flower. You? Ruoshi gritted her teeth. It must be you. Yi Shiwen was somewhat baffled as he looked at these two sisters. The relationship between the two sides was obviously not ordinary. It was to the point where they had to hire an assassin to kill their own sister. In the end, what kind of deep hatred did they have for each other? So, what if it was me? What can you do to me? Ruoqing giggled, as if looking at her bitter and vengeful appearance was quite interesting. You betrayed the sect, and now you don't even want to let me go? Ruoshi said angrily. That old bastard has always been partial to you. You entered the sect so much later than me. Why did all the resources in the sect go to you? Ruoqing said indifferently. Now, that old bastard is also dead. Let's see who can protect you in the future. TSK baby, is this your good junior sister? She looks good. The young man looked at Ruoshi with a somewhat lascivious smile on his face. Why? Is young Master Dai interested in my junior sister? Ruoqing smiled charmingly as she looked at young Master Dai. Her face was filled with a coquettish smile. Ha ha ha, you know me the best. Sisters, I like them the most. Young Master Dai smiled obscenely and patted Ruoqing's plump buttocks, causing eye-catching ripples. At this time, Ruoshi was already gnashing her teeth in anger. She was about to step forward when suddenly, a hand was placed on her shoulder. Aren't you here to be my guide? Why do you stop when you see something? Yi Shiwen's indifferent voice came out. Ruoshi gawked for a moment, then burst into laughter. Yi Shiwen was comparing them to things. Sure enough, that young Master Dai's complexion suddenly collapsed. He ferociously looked at Yi Shiwen, then said, Boy, what did you say? From all aspects, Yi Shiwen could tell that he was only a few hundred years old. So, he could only be regarded as a junior among these experts. Let's go. Yi Shiwen ignored him and directly said to Ruoshi, Senior, you're right. Ruoshi nodded and said with a smile. The suffocating and uncomfortable feeling just now had disappeared without a trace. Stop. Young Master Dai took a step forward and stopped the two of them. Originally, this young master was in a good mood today and didn't want to fuss about it with the two of you. But the two of you actually dared to disregard this young master. You truly have the nerve. Kid, that young lady behind you isn't bad as well. Give her to warm this young master's bed, and I'll let you off. Otherwise, the two of you can dream of walking out of the Primordius Pavilion today. Senior, Ruoshi saw that this young Master Dai was about to turn hostile and immediately said with some worry, I'd like to see if I can walk out of this Primordius Pavilion. The corner of Yi Shiwen's mouth pulled into a sneer. His eyes were filled with killing intent. This young Master Dai was really bold. He actually dared to stretch his dog claws towards Liya. This was simply touching the reverse scale of his heart. Young Master Dai, don't tell me you want to fight here? Primordius Pavilion is not a place where you can act recklessly. Ruoshi took a step forward and said, Junior sister, who do you think young Master Dai is? Is he a wild man that you casually brought back? Young Master Dai is the son of an elder of the Great Change Divine Cult. He is the young master of the Great Change Divine Cult. I think you've heard of the name of the Great Change Divine Cult. Ruoshi giggled as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. Ruashi's expression suddenly changed when she heard the name of the Great Change Divine Cult. She hurriedly transmitted a message to Yi Shiwen. Senior, the Great Change Divine Cult is a sect in a nearby world. There are countless experts in the sect. There are even legendary experts in the sect. They are very difficult to deal with. Why don't we take a step back? To her, a legendary expert was simply as big as the sky. They were simply not an opponent that she could match. Although she had already stepped into the profound death realm, there was still a world of difference between her and a legendary expert. Although she had guessed that Yi Shiwen's strength was not low and could even be a legendary existence, it was merely a guess. Compared to the famous Great Change Divine Cult, they were simply not on the same level. It doesn't matter. I'd like to see what's so special about this Great Change Divine Cult. I can't even touch or provoke them. Yi Shiwen shook his head. He did not take Ruashi's words seriously at all. He was just about to speak when he saw that young Master Dai saw that Yi Shiwen did not speak for a while. He thought that Yi Shiwen was frightened. This time, his face became even more insolent. Now you know how to regret it. Unfortunately, it's too late. Young Master Dai said coldly. Since the day I was born, no one has dared to ignore me. Today, I'll let you know the consequences of offending me. So it turns out that you have a mother, but no father. Since your parents did not teach you how to behave, let me teach you a lesson, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Ha! Young Master Dai laughed in extreme anger when he heard this. He had already been thoroughly infuriated by Yi Shiwen. All of you, get out of my way. I don't care if you accidentally injure me. Young Master Dai roared loudly. This could be considered as an explanation to the surrounding onlookers. Then, he rushed towards Yi Shiwen with killing intent. Who do you think you are? You actually dare to be so insolent in front of this young master. Boom! The aura on his body instantly exploded. The strength that belonged to the peak of the profound death stage spread out in all directions in an instant. Although the surrounding onlookers also possessed great cultivation, they were all blown away at this moment. They were unable to put up any resistance at all. Peak profound death stage. With such strength, it was no wonder he was so arrogant. In fact, such strength was sufficient for him to rule over a small world that was slightly weaker than him. Other than some old monsters that were not seen for many years, a peak of the profound death stage was already the strongest expert that everyone could see. Young Master Dai's eyebrows were wide open. He was burning with rage. This Yi Shiwen actually dared to be arrogant and despotic in front of him. He was simply courting death. He basically did not care about Yi Shiwen. It was as if a slave under him had suddenly started to rebel. What great change, divine sect! Since your parents did not call for you, let me properly teach you a lesson. A somewhat angry expression flashed across Yi Shiwen's face. Good brat, young Master Dai sneered. His hand grabbed out. His 5 fingers formed a hook and directly grabbed towards Yi Shiwen. Dai's frightening aura caused the entire sky to violently tremble. The surrounding onlookers could not help but turn pale with fright. There were also some people who had already recognized the identity of young Master Dai. Although he relied on the prestige of the Great Change Divine Sect to act mighty, it did not mean that he was a guy that lived off a woman. His arrogance and despotic actions had offended so many people. It was unknown just how many families he had caused. Many people did not care about the prestige of the Great Change Divine Sect and wanted to perish together with him. However, they were unable to do so and were easily defeated by him. Many people had been tortured to death by him. In the eyes of many people, the gazes that looked towards Yi Shiwen were already incomparably pitiful. This person was probably going to follow in the footsteps of others. However, while everyone was in shock, a slender hand directly slapped out from the void. Pa! An incomparably loud and clear sound of a slap rang out. This slender hand was just like a cool breeze brushing past, before ruthlessly slapping young Master Dai's face. Pa! This loud and clear sound of a slap directly slapped the hearts of everyone. That was because the one who had slapped him was Leah, whom they had not noticed earlier. Following beside Yi Shiwen, Leah had also retracted her aura. Her appearance was the same as when he had held her little hand and walked out of the ruins many years ago. However, what had been completely overlooked was that she was no longer the same as before. In fact, her cultivation speed was even faster than Yi Shiwen's. If not for the fact that her clan had no way of solving this problem, she would have already stepped into the myth realm by now. Even if she had yet to step into the myth realm, she was not someone that young Master Dai could easily humiliate. Bang! Following the sound of a slap, young Master Dai was slapped until he started to spin, after which he was ruthlessly flung out and directly smashed into the wall. Only after a few seconds did everyone react. Many people could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. The originally handsome face of young Master Dai had already been slapped to the point where half of the bones had already been broken. Flesh and blood were flying in all directions, appearing extremely miserable. This was someone who was similarly at the peak of the profound death realm, and not some random cat or dog from the roadside. The gazes that everyone looked at Li Ye immediately changed. Although they were still unable to see exactly what level Li Ye's strength had reached, she was at the very least in existence at the peak of the profound death realm. As for the myth realm, it could only be said to be at an unimaginable level. Yi Shiwen smiled as he patted Li Ye's little head. Just like many years ago, there was a somewhat comforting smile on his face. Well done. Looks like your cultivation hasn't been delayed. Once your father's matter is settled, I'll pass on a divine ability to you, said Yi Shiwen with a smile. He had always spared no effort when it came to Li Ye. That was because she was his first, and as of now, his only disciple. Bang! A terrifying aura rose from young Master Dai's body. Chapter 2060. He was thoroughly enraged. Terrifying power was contained within his bloodshot eyes. The aura on his body unfurled in circles, appearing exceedingly frightening. It was as if he was about to expand his domain. However, it was suppressed to a radius of less than 10 meters by the Primal Origin Pavilion. One could well imagine how formidable this treasure of the Primal Origin Pavilion was. It was able to suppress a peak profound death stage expert to the point where he had no way to retaliate. Even so, the current young Master Dai still appeared exceedingly frightening. The expressions of many people immediately turned extremely ugly. However, there were even more who became excited, because they seemed to have witnessed something fun. There was naturally no need to mention the might of the Primal Origin Pavilion. It was rather famous in the nearby worlds. However, the Great Change God sect was no pushover. Otherwise, how would young Master Dai dare to stir up trouble in the Primal Origin Pavilion? Boom! Young Master Dai's fist rumbled towards Yi Shiwen. Although it had been suppressed to a very small area by the Primal Origin Pavilion, its power was still concentrated in a small area, making it even more terrifying. The fist pressure caused cracks to appear in the sky. This was still within the Primal Origin Pavilion. If it was outside, it would definitely be an earth-shattering scene. What followed next was an even more unforgettable scene. Yi Shiwen was not the slightest bit flustered in the face of such a frightening attack. Young Master Dai had already pounced over in practically an instant. Only at this moment did Yi Shiwen finally react. He lifted his leg and kicked out. There wasn't even the slightest fluctuation of true yuan. It was as if it was just a simple kick. Then a flabbergasted scene appeared in front of everyone. Young Master Dai's dreadful fist intention, under Yi Shiwen's foot, unexpectedly collapsed in an instant. It broke cleanly in a split second. Wherever Yi Shiwen's foot went, the fist intention would collapse there. No one could believe how dreadful it was. Next, Yi Shiwen's foot directly landed on young Master Dai's face. Bang! Another incomparably loud rumble rang out. Yi Shiwen didn't seem to have exerted any strength at all, as young Master Dai was sent flying with a single kick. He smashed into the walls of the Primal Origin Pavilion, causing cracks to appear. His head was bleeding profusely at this moment, and his skull was cracked from being stepped on. Hiss! The surrounding people gasped. No one expected Yi Shiwen to be so ferocious. Compared to Li Ye just now, his movements were even lighter. There was not a trace of smoke and fire at all. At this time, How could everyone still not understand that this Yi Shiwen's strength was probably far above this young Master Dai? Otherwise, it was basically impossible for him to cripple this young Master Dai so easily. It was just 1 foot, and he didn't use any magical power or any leg technique. It was just a very simple step, but it could actually produce such an effect. This was a mythical figure. This was the only thought that popped up in everyone's mind. Only a legendary figure would possess such strength. Similarly, only a legendary figure would dare to disregard the threat of the Great Change sect and trample on young Master Dai to such a state. However, these were merely guesses and could not be verified. Those who were able to enter the Primal Origin Pavilion were undoubtedly the most distinguished guests. These people were experts at the profound death realm, at the very least. However, none of them dared to be presumptuous at this moment. Regardless of whether Yi Shiwen was a legendary expert or not, he was not someone they could afford to provoke. Young Master Dai struggled for a while, wanting to climb up. He roared like an injured beast. Yi Shiwen looked at him expressionlessly. He directly pinched a seal, forming a seal character in the air, and directly pressed down. Bang! Another loud sound rang out. This time, young Master Dai was simply unable to climb up. The seal character on his body was like the most frightening chain, completely suppressing him. You dare to suppress me? Do you know who I am? My father will not let you off. Young Master Dai roared. Yi Shiwen frowned slightly. This kind of idiot was only an idiot. No matter how strong he was, he could not change the nature of a playboy deep in his bones. He would not be able to achieve great things. To be able to cultivate to this level, it was most likely the result of the Great Change sect's expenditure of countless resources. Compared to the Heavenly Fox Young Master, Jun Dingtian, by Jiansheng and the others that Yi Shiwen had seen before, the difference was simply like the clouds and mud. He was not even fit to carry the shoes of these opponents. Then let them come, Yi Shiwen said indifferently. Yi Shiwen did not even have the intention to kill this kind of idiot. It was a complete waste. At this time, Ruo Qing was completely scared silly. In her heart, young Master Dai, who was almost invincible, was suppressed so easily. First, he was sent flying by a slap from that unremarkable little girl, and then he was easily suppressed by this handsome young man. This person looked to be only a few hundred years old. He was not even as old as her. How could he be so terrifying? This feeling made her feel as if she had returned to the time when she had just joined the sect. It was the same feeling she had when she faced that old fart. Mysterious, powerful, and unfathomable. It was the same feeling. One must know that she had already stepped into the profound death realm. To be able to give her such a feeling, even if this person was not in the myth realm, he was not far from it. Thinking that she had actually offended such a terrifying expert, she could not help but tremble. However, what made her rejoice was that Yi Shiwen did not even look at her. He directly said to Ruoshi, let's go in." Although he did not have a good impression of Ruo Qing, he had never thought of getting involved in other people's family matters. "Yes, senior." Compared to the dazed Ruo Qing, Ruoshi's face was brimming with a smile. She had indeed not misjudged him. Yi Shiwen and the others directly entered the primordial chaos building, disappearing before everyone's eyes. At this time, everyone finally dared to breathe. Although Yi Shiwen did not reveal any powerful aura from the beginning to the end, just his unfathomable strength alone, as if he had casually sent young Master Dai away, had completely frightened everyone. This kind of strength was not something an ordinary person could possess. It was almost at the level of the legendary myth realm experts. Facing such an expert, everyone was afraid that even breathing would arouse this expert's disgust, causing him to be killed in one move. If that happened, they would not even have a place to cry. It's so scary. I thought I was already very scary when I saw the overwhelming aura of a mythical expert, but now it seems that this kind of understatement, without a trace of smoke and fire, is the real power. That's right, it's really terrifying. That little girl was already very powerful, but this person is even more powerful. Who is this person? I've never heard of him before. Could it be that he is an expert from another world? It's also possible. After all, the divine Dan world has appeared in the vicinity. Many rarely seen myth realm experts have also appeared one after another. These myth realm experts have extraordinary means and methods to prolong their lifespan. I don't know how many myth realm experts have survived for, so it's normal that we don't know them. This time, this young Master Dai has completely kicked an iron plate. This time, he has been taught a terrible lesson. Haha, he has been beaten up like a dead dog. That's right, he thought that he was very strong, but in the end, he was trampled into a cripple. This young Master Dai was lying on his stomach on the ground. His posture was very humiliating. His ears were listening to the ridicule of the people around him. His face had already become abnormally ugly. However, his face had already been trampled, so it was impossible to see it. This word seal not only made him unable to move, but also sealed the energy of his entire body, causing him to bleed incessantly. However, he was unable to mobilize Zhen Yuan to repair his wounds, making him look abnormally ferocious. Damn, you people actually dare to laugh at me. Just you wait. Wait for me to break out from inside. I will certainly dismember your corpses into 10,000 pieces. I will kill all of you, and that damn human brat, I will definitely kill you. Young Master Dai was still roaring even at this stage. That was because there was a colossus standing behind him, the Great Change Divine Sect. Yi Shiwen was walking on the corridor of the primordial building. Young Master Dai's roars could still be heard behind him. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care at all. This kind of debauchee wasn't enough to pose any threat to him. Senior, although this young Master Dai is nothing, there are several legendary experts in the Great Change Divine Sect. It will be troublesome if they attack us. Ruashi said in a somewhat worried manner. It's nothing, you don't need to worry. Yi Shiwen shook his head and didn't take it to heart. I also want to see what kind of person has taught this idiot. Ruashi looked at Yi Shiwen with a strange expression on her face. She knew that Yi Shiwen was probably younger than her. However, in the world of warriors, the strong were respected, and the strong were respected. Therefore, there was nothing wrong with addressing him as senior. However, the feeling of being able to call in existence at the peak of the profound death realm an idiot made her feel abnormally strange. However, she couldn't help but feel a little excited in her heart. Following Yi Shiwen, she felt as if her level had also increased. Yi Shiwen could naturally see what Ruashi was thinking. However, he didn't have any intention to explain. Compared to those peak experts that he had encountered, Ruashi could only be considered as an idiot who had grown up in a greenhouse. They walked all the way inside. However, the news spread faster than they could advance. Before they had even walked halfway, the person in charge of the primordial building had personally come to visit them. It was a legendary expert. From afar, he appeared to be a short and fat man dressed in a gorgeous robe. His plump figure made him look somewhat comical. Chapter 2061. This person actually looked a little funny, with a warm smile on his face. However, Yi Shiwen did not dare to look down on him. From the faintly discernible fluctuations on his body, he was actually a legend expert. The primordial pavilion indeed had a deep foundation. Not only was the primordial pavilion itself a powerful artifact, but it also had a legend expert guarding it at all times. My name is Bao Sanhua. I didn't know that you would come. Please forgive me for not coming out to greet you. The person came up with a smile on his face. He did not look down on Yi Shiwen just because of his young age. The news had already reached him. At first, he was a little surprised and even a little in disbelief. A junior like young Master Dai, although he didn't take him to heart, but in the end, to ordinary people, he was also a rarely seen expert. Young Master Dai had always been arrogant and despotic. It wasn't that there weren't people who could deal with him. It was just that ordinary people weren't a match for him. Those who could deal with him, firstly, were too lazy to deal with the younger generation. Secondly, they were afraid of the Great Change sect behind him. Hence, they would give them face. This time, he had really kicked an iron plate. However, that was a matter between Yi Shiwen and the Great Change God sect. It had nothing to do with the primordial pavilion. Moreover, young Master Dai, who was only at the profound death realm, was not someone he cared about. They were not on the same level. You are too polite. Yi Shiwen did not mind giving face to the other party. May I know what you are here to buy from the Primordial Pavilion? Bao Sanhua asked. I want to buy information. Yi Shiwen asked. Information about the Divine Dan world? Bao Sanhua smiled. There have been many people asking about this recently. I believe that you are here for this matter as well. Yes. Yi Shiwen nodded. I wonder if the Primordial Pavilion has any information about the Divine Dan world. More or less. Bao Sanhua said with a smile. This time, when the Divine Dan realm appeared, we also obtained an ancient map of the Divine Dan realm. I wonder if brother is interested? Ancient map? Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up. That's right, someone found it in the Dan God realm. However, there are only 100 copies of the map. If brother wants to obtain it, you can participate in our auction. Bao Sanhua said, we can't guarantee the accuracy of this map, because this map is a map of the Dan God realm from many years ago. No one knows what it has become now, but we can guarantee that the source of the news is reliable. I want it, Yi Shiwen immediately said. In any case, having this map was much better than having nothing at all. But Bao Sanhua looked at Yi Shiwen with a bitter smile and said, What's the problem? Yi Shiwen asked. Bao Sanhua, why haven't you settled the matter yet? Suddenly, a frivolous voice came from behind Bao Sanhua. Then, a tall alien covered in jade-green scales walked over. He looked a little ferocious. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. He instinctively felt that Bao Sanhua's predicament was related to this foreigner. Brother, although we have the map in our hands, this brother is also interested. What do you think? Bao Sanhua said. It's fine, I only need the inscription. Yi Shiwen said. That's for the best. Bao Sanhua immediately said with a smile. Wait a minute, I haven't said yes yet. The foreign race expert stepped forward and said coldly. Bao Sanhua, our master is willing to look for you. That's giving you face. Don't be so shameless. Bao Sanhua's face immediately fell. Although he greeted people with a smile, he was a genuine legendary expert with his own pride and self-esteem. However, the expression on his face only flashed for a moment, and he soon restored his genial appearance. However, all of this could not be hidden from Yi Shiwen's eyes, and he thought, this Bao Sanhua is not a person without a temper. I want to ask, who is your master? How can he be so arrogant? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and said with a bad expression. This foreigner shot a glance at Yi Shiwen and indifferently said, Lord's prestige isn't something of backwater, like you can know. It's not too late for you to get lost now. Otherwise, I'll make you pay for it later. Even if Yi Shiwen's temper was good, he couldn't help it at this time. Not to mention, he had a strong character. I really don't believe it. This map, I want it, no matter who says it is useless. Yi Shiwen said, Brat, I think you're looking to die. You're just a human, but you dare to clamor in front of me? I've eaten quite a few people like you who think they're young geniuses. I've eaten them alive. The outsider laughed malevolently, revealing a mouthful of sharp, snow-white teeth. Yi Shiwen did not speak, but his eyes flashed with killing intent. It seems that you are really tired of living. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. Good. I like to eat those self-righteous humans the most. This terrifying native clan member instantly attacked and directly clawed towards Yi Shiwen. In an instant, it seemed as if it had turned into a monstrous hell. It had turned into a scroll and directly pressed down on Yi Shiwen. Even under the suppression of the primordial chaos building, it still burst out with shocking power. This was the horror of a legendary master. The strength of a terrifying master at the third, heavenly level of the legendary realm had completely burst out. Wallalala! The terrible airwaves blew on Yi Shiwen's body, and the clothes on his body fluttered in the wind. Yi Shiwen's body was constantly swaying, and this monstrous momentum couldn't descend on Yi Shiwen's body at all. Death! The terrifying big hand of the foreign race expert grabbed down, and his eyes revealed an ominous glint. The big hand that had turned into a terrible scroll directly slapped down and wanted to shatter the space, shattering all the space that Yi Shiwen could dodge. Clang! Suddenly, a pair of golden wings appeared behind Yi Shiwen and enveloped him in it. That monstrous giant hand was fiercely blocked. The foreign race expert was stunned for a moment, and then a cruel smile appeared on his face. Boy, I didn't expect that you would also enter the legendary realm. But it's useless. A mere first heavenly level of the legendary realm dares to be arrogant in front of me? You are still too weak. He took a step forward, and suddenly a monstrous aura swept out. A terrifying aura that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas swept out. Endless real elemental energy rolled out and pressed down, bringing with it an overwhelming divinity that directly crushed down. This was a terrifying existence at the third heavenly level of the legendary realm. You're only a first division godmyth, boy, but I can't believe you forced me to go all out. You're the first person to do that. But if you can push me this far, you're going to end up in a very bad state. I'm going to eat you up piece by piece. For a moment, the entire void was filled with a terrifying power, and even the entire primordial pavilion began to react. The formation was activated, and it wanted to suppress the power of the foreign race expert, but it was blocked by the foreign race expert. The foreign race expert didn't care about the pressure of the primordial pavilion, and the terrifying power on his body directly crushed Yi Shiwen's divine soul. His realm was much higher than Yi Shiwen's, and he planned to use the advantage of his realm to suppress Yi Shiwen. Bao Sanhua hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Stop, this is our primordial pavilion. Don't tell me you want to act recklessly? Get lost. Who dares to block my way?" The foreign race expert said coldly, and directly pushed Bao Sanhua away, and directly attacked Yi Shiwen. Li Ye and Ruashi, who were behind Yi Shiwen, repeatedly retreated. Although they had entered the profound death realm, there was no way they could compare to a legendary expert. Simply stubborn. Just kill him. I'd like to see if that master of yours will come looking for trouble with me. Yi Shiwen was also completely enraged. Although he didn't want to cause trouble, he was absolutely not afraid of it. Suddenly, his body shook, and he suddenly took a step forward. Like a sharp blade, the aura created by the foreign race expert was completely destroyed by Yi Shiwen in an instant. Then, Yi Shiwen took another step forward and directly rushed in front of the foreign race expert and directly punched out. Boom! The entire void was trembling. That was a punch that was integrated with a terrifying fist intent, and the entire void was sucked out by this punch. Countless fist principles turned into talismans and directly appeared, and then directly fell on the foreign race expert. This punch wasn't just a simple punch. It clearly contained all of Yi Shiwen's understanding of the fist way. He had condensed all of it into this punch. It was extraordinarily powerful. At this moment, the expression of the foreign race expert changed in an instant. Why did a warrior of the first level of Paoang realm give him such an extremely dangerous feeling, as if he would really be killed by this person? All of the defense on his body was almost completely broken in an instant, and he was shocked by Yi Shiwen. His whole body took a few steps back and instinctively wanted to retreat to avoid the sharpness of Yi Shiwen's fist, but it was completely useless. Yi Shiwen's fist seemed to be installed with a navigation system and directly locked onto him, making it impossible for him to escape. Yi Shiwen sealed the surrounding space and directly blasted towards his head. Damn human die! With nowhere to retreat, the foreign race expert let out a loud roar and simply stopped retreating. Then, he completely went forward and blasted out a punch, wanting to compete with Yi Shiwen to see whose body was stronger. Boom! An incomparably loud roar sounded, and his fist and Yi Shiwen's fist collided fiercely. Ah! A miserable scream came from the mouth of the foreign race expert. Chapter 2062. Art! The alien suddenly felt an endless pain, as if his entire arm was about to be torn apart. The protective Zhen Yuan around his body was completely shattered. Then, that terrible power directly fell on his fist, and then his entire arm began to disintegrate inch by inch in the void. The primitive laws and talismans that appeared on his arm were completely useless. They couldn't even block the terrible power that was wreaking havoc on his arm. He roared in pain and retreated again and again, escaping from the collision with Yi Shiwen. He looked at Yi Shiwen with incomparable horror in his eyes. He could not believe it. His realm was 2 whole realms higher than Yi Shiwen's, but his physical body was so vulnerable when facing Yi Shiwen. He was not a match for Yi Shiwen at all. Just how strong was Yi Shiwen's physical body? Inside Yi Shiwen's body, the Fist Dao incarnation slowly integrated into his body, and his strength also rose at an astonishing speed. Facing such a powerful legendary expert at the 3rd level of Powong realm, even he had to be cautious. Even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit. Yi Shiwen took another step forward and actually directly chased after the foreign race expert, like a monarch descending to the mortal world. That terrifying aura came crashing down on that foreign being. What's going on? He clearly saw a universe pressing down on him. His entire person was almost hysterically roaring. What was going on? Could it be that he was hallucinating? That monstrous fist intent actually had no reaction under the suppression of the primordial building. Bao Sanhua looked at Yi Shiwen in shock. He was very clear that under the suppression of the primordial building, even legendary experts would be affected, but looking at Yi Shiwen's appearance, he did not seem to be affected at all. Under the suppression of Yi Shiwen's terrifying aura, the foreign race expert could not move at all, and it seemed like he was completely suppressed. Want to eat me? You still dare to say that? Yi Shiwen playfully looked at the foreign race expert who was constantly struggling, but under the impact of the tyrannical power, there was no use at all. How is this possible? You're just at the 1st level of the Powong realm. How can you suppress me? I can't be suppressed by someone at the 1st level of the Powong realm. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. The expert of the foreign race kept struggling and roaring. Yi Shiwen stood steadily and suppressed him. Currently, Yi Shiwen had only fused with the fist incarnation. He had not even entered the state of 5 Emperor's possession, let alone fusing with the 2nd sword incarnation. But even so, his strength had reached an unimaginable level. It was simply immeasurable. The outsider expert's entire body was trembling. He was filled with endless humiliation and rage. He roared out continuously, trying to struggle free. Powerful true energy spread out and exploded out. Boom! That foreign race powerhouse's body flickered with golden light. He wanted to break free from Yi Shiwen's suppression. Yi Shiwen ferociously stomped his foot down. The power that erupted spread out and directly suppressed his foot. Any explosive reaction wasn't a match for Yi Shiwen at all, and was directly suppressed by him. Damn human, you'll definitely die, and you'll definitely die miserably. Do you know who I am? Do you know how powerful my lord is? If you offend my lord, there'll be no place for you to hide in the entire universe. He continued to roar and tried to break free from Yi Shiwen's foot. When that time comes, I'll definitely kill you. I'll skin you alive. Stubborn. Originally, I didn't have to kill you, but now that you've said it, I'll definitely kill you. Yi Shiwen's eyes flickered with a shocking killing intent. He stomped his foot and directly caused the expert of the foreign race to spit out a mouthful of blood. Brother, please have mercy. Bao Sanhua quickly stepped forward and said, Don't worry, I won't implicate you. When the time comes, just push the blame to me. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. He wasn't afraid at all. His range of activity was too far away from this universe. If it wasn't for the sake of rescuing Li Feng, he probably wouldn't have come here at all. He wasn't from here at all, so naturally, he wasn't afraid of the revenge of the local tyrant. Bao Sanhua looked at Yi Shiwen with a bitter smile and said, Brother, please have mercy. Although he's insignificant, the person behind him is very powerful. If a subordinate dies in our primordial chaos pavilion, I'm afraid the primordial chaos pavilion will be implicated. If that's the case, I'll give you face. However, even if he can be spared from death, he can't escape punishment. Isn't he relying on his powerful strength to commit crimes? In that case, I'll take away his strength and teach him a lesson. As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, he didn't give Bao Sanhua any time to stop him. His 5 fingers turned into claws and directly grabbed the expert of the foreign race, pressing it on his head. Even though this foreign race expert was suppressed by Yi Shiwen, he was still so arrogant. It was obvious that he wouldn't rest until Yi Shiwen was dead. Yi Shiwen naturally wouldn't be polite to such a person. However, he also didn't want to offend the primordial chaos pavilion to the extreme. However, taking away the strength of a person was also a great punishment for him. After stepping into the myth realm, everything was different for Yi Shiwen. They were both myth experts. Even if the opponent was at the peak of myth realm, it was impossible for him to kill him like a bug like before. Yi Shiwen started to revolve his power. The principles and magic charms condensed in the body of this foreign race expert were extracted at once and condensed into a mass of earth-shattering blood essence. All of it contained incomparably pure energy. He didn't absorb it himself. Instead, he threw it directly onto Liya. He already had a portion of the blood essence of dozens of myth experts in his body. So far, he hadn't been able to completely absorb that huge amount of energy. Extra energy was meaningless to him. As long as he absorbed all the blood essence, he would be able to make great progress. But for Liya, it was different. This was a top-notch blood essence belonging to the third sky of the myth realm. It was enough to make her cultivation progress to an astonishing level. However, this energy completely fell into Liya's body. It couldn't directly push her into the myth realm. This made Yi Shiwen feel strange. This life essence was undoubtedly more than enough to create a myth expert. At this time, he recalled what Liya had said before. Her race actually had such a fate. If she couldn't break through, she would never be able to step into the myth realm. However, this energy wasn't wasted. As long as Liya stepped into the myth realm, this life essence would completely erupt and help her advance further. Maybe she would directly break into the second sky of the Paoang realm. This was equivalent to this foreign race expert's 10,000 years of bitter cultivation being poured into Liya's body all at once. Yi Shiwen's attack was ruthless and merciless. He didn't hold back at all. He didn't leave anything behind. This foreign race expert was constantly screaming in pain. His entire body's strength was being sucked away. To him, this was simply an incomparably terrifying blow. "How dare you? How dare you?" He roared as if he still couldn't believe it. Perhaps after following his lord, things had been too smooth for him. In so many worlds, no one dared to offend his lord. No one even dared to provoke him. He had long forgotten that there might still be people who didn't take him and his lord seriously. Supreme technique. Explode. He roared. All of a sudden, a powerful force gushed out from his body. Finally, a terrifying force surged out from his blood vessels. It was a kind of imprint that was deeply embedded in his soul, and it suddenly surged out. However, a peerless and proud figure leapt out of his body at this time. It was a young man dressed in a strange robe. He stood tall and straight with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked like a long spear that pierced through the heaven and earth. He had an earth-shattering aura as he coldly looked at Yi Shiwen. "My lord, save me." The foreign race expert quickly knelt down and struggled to escape from Yi Shiwen's control. "Who are you? How dare you touch my slave?" He didn't even look at the foreign race expert lying on the ground. He just looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. His eyes flickered with brilliance. It looked very terrifying. "So this is your slave?" Yi Shiwen glanced at him. There was a dignified look in his eyes. It was just a virtual shadow, but it gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. His real body was definitely an earth-shattering powerhouse. "If you can't control your slave well, then don't blame me for helping you," Yi Shiwen said without any trace of politeness. "I can teach my slave a lesson, but you are not qualified," he said indifferently. "A mere spirit incarnation dares to be presumptuous in front of me. I think you are crazy." Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. He had already seen that this wasn't the real body. Although it also possessed extremely powerful strength, it was still far from being able to challenge Yi Shiwen. "Humph, an ant. Do you think I'm that trash?" After saying that, the aura of the young man began to expand. In the void, a huge crack was torn open by a force. There was a powerful force that wanted to directly travel across the vast sky. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. This spirit incarnation actually used his body as a coordinate to summon an extremely powerful force across the vast sky and instilled it into his body. How can I let you succeed? Yi Xuan saw it at a glance. Naturally, he couldn't let him succeed. He immediately attacked. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.